It is 7:30. If you'd give me a signal when you're on. Okay, we're on. All right, folks, I call to order the regular meeting of the Oradell Zoning Board of Adjustment for Monday, May 20th, 2024. It is 7:30 p.m. Notice for this meeting was published in the official newspaper, prominently posted in Borough Hall and filed with the clerk's office in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must always be maintained. Any questions and comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision. Roll call. I'll begin that. Mr. Barrows? No. Mr. Bartlett? Ms. Devine?
Present.
Mr. Devine, I apologize. Ms. Zadinsky? Oh, she's out. Mr. Camparial?
Present.
Present. Ms. Day?
Here.
Okay. Mr. Santaniello?
Here.
Ms. Cobb?
Here.
And Mr. Michaelman here. With that, Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is approval of the zoning board meeting minutes for April 15th, 2024. Does anyone have any adjustments or amendments to the minutes as submitted? In that case, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Yep. Also move to
I have
approve.
a motion. Do we have a second?
Sure.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, minutes have been accepted. Correspondence. The zoning board procedure, there's no correspondence listed here. The zoning board procedures. We have a lot of people here who, many first time present, so I'll take a few more minutes than normal. We are not a court, but we act in the nature of a court. What happens in this is someone wants to do something on their property, they ask for a permit. If it's okay, the zoning ordinances approve it, Steve gives them an approval. He gives them the permit. If there's a problem that the zoning ordinances don't seem to allow for this, they can ask for a variance from the zoning ordinances. In order to get the variance, they have to come before the zoning board. They have to present a case. It is their responsibility to demonstrate through what's called proofs that the positives substantially outweigh the negatives. It's their burden. Now, in presenting the case, and this is where it's important that to those of you who are interested, and since you're here, you're all interested, normally we speak to an empty room. All right? We do it in order. The applicant puts on a case, they put on their witnesses. The applicant's witness is questioned first, of course, by his or her attorney, then by our board professionals, then by the board. After that, members of the public can question the witness only about their testimony. This isn't the time where you come up and say, I've looked at the plans and I don't agree with X, Y, and Z. If it has nothing to do with their testimony, you don't do it at that point. We're not restricting anybody. But what happens now is another witness will come up, and it's the same thing. Questioned by the applicant, applicant's attorney, questioned by our professionals, questioned by the board, and questioned by members of the public only about the testimony. At the end, we do get a chance for closing remarks. That's the point at which you can raise the issues that are relevant to the case. We're not silencing anybody. Everybody's opinions and thoughts and questions will be heard, as long as it's relevant to the case, of course. But it has to be done in the right order. On occasion, because people are not familiar with these procedures, they come up and want to say something that's out of order. And that puts me in the awkward position of having to shut them down. I don't like doing that. You know, you're residents, same as me. I just think that we all should respect each other and follow order, and then we'll have no problem. Now, once this is over, the case comes before the board, and we vote. If we vote yes, they have their request granted. If we vote no, that's the end of it from our standpoint, but they can go to court and try and challenge our decision. That's the way it works. I hope that that's clear, and I hope you also see that we want everybody to participate. We just wanted the participation to occur at the proper time. So, and if I sound like I'm lecturing you, I apologize for that, but I was lecturing you. Swearing in.
Yeah, I'll
we're
swear in
starting-
Mr. Depkin, plus the two board professionals, our
Please.
planner and our engineer. You swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this proceeding shall be true, so help you God.
I do.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Depkin has been sworn, as well as Borough Engineer Atkinson and Borough Planner Green.
Thank you.
Ryder, I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, what happens is we have the case. We generally allow 3 hours for up to 3 hours for testimony with a 10-minute break around 9 o'clock. So everybody can see that. And in this case, it's the only one we're going to hear tonight, there was an issue that we resolved by starting over. So if any of you watched the last meetings relating to this case, take it and put it out of your head. It doesn't exist. We're starting over. And with that, if I can put my reading glasses on, I will call application 874-24 BCUW Madeline Housing Partners LLC. Sir?
As you know, I'll step down from this one.
Okay. And our board secretary is stepping down. Sir?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Bruce Whitaker from the firm of McDonald Whitaker, representing Bergen County United Way Madeline Housing Partners LLC, the applicant before you this evening, requesting preliminary and final site plan approval, variance approval, and soil movement approval. As Mr. Chairman, you've already confirmed, anything that's been said in the past is in the past and is not to be considered, and we are starting fresh. So it's Bougie Day all over again, perhaps, but I'm going to give my opening statement to you for the purposes of giving you an overview of the application. And then I plan on calling 3 witnesses, Mr. Toronto, to describe what the various aspects of the facility is all about, and place that on the record. And then we have our architect, Jane Pergona, for purposes of explaining how the construction and how the plans have been prepared and what the requirements are from the state.
Yeah, hold on one second. There's cell phones that are still on. Please turn your cell phones off. It interrupts the broadcast, but also interrupts what is the official record. We don't keep anything, well, we have a stenographer, but she doesn't work for us. The borough is required to have an official record of these hearings. That's done through OPTV. If you have your cell phones on, it interrupts the official record. Please turn the cell phones off. Thank you. And I apologize for the interruption.
As I was stating, our second witness will be James Pergona, our architect, to explain what the guidelines and requirements are from the pertinent state agencies that deal with the supportive housing that we are proposing. And then finally, we will have Mr. Halls testifying in connection with the engineering aspect and the planning aspect, as both an engineer as well as a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. So with that said, the applicant has entered into an agreement with the Borough of Oradell to develop this property located on Genther Avenue, which is shown on your tax map as Block 223, Lot number 5. The applicant is proposing to develop this property with a group home for persons with disabilities. The applicant is proposing to construct a 2-story group home. I refer you to the 2022 amendment to the housing element and the fair share plan, which was adopted by the Borough of Oradell. On page 5 of that report, it confirms that the Borough of Oradell entered into an agreement with Bergen County United Way. The borough has agreed to donate the property to Bergen County United Way for the purposes of constructing a 4-bedroom group home. And at that point in the agreement, originally it was for 3 2-bedroom apartments. The applicant is actually downsizing this to provide for the 4-bedroom group home and then a 1-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment on the second floor. The group home, as well as the apartments, will be occupied by adults with developmental disabilities and qualified as affordable housing units. It will be a project that will be labeled as for your unmet need mechanism under the affordable housing requirements, and it's in conformity with the First Amendment to your June 18th settlement agreement by and between the Borough of Oradell and Fair Share Housing. By virtue of this application, if it is approved, the Borough of Oradell will get double the typical credits, so there would be 14 credits rather than 7 credits. As I stated, the applicant is seeking preliminary and final site plan approval, variance approval, and soil movement approval for this project. There are certain variances that we are requesting in connection with this application. This is, as you know, a very oversized lot, but in connection with the guidelines and requirements we have to be able to construct this type of facility, our lot coverage will be 42.4% proposed, where 40% is the maximum permitted in the R-4 zone where this is located. We will have combined side yard setbacks of 91.3 feet, where 109.3 feet is required. We are seeking a variance, which would be a D variance, a soft D variance, if you will, for floor area ratio, your FAR. We are proposing 5,930 square feet, where 3,938 square feet is the maximum permitted. But when you look at the size of the lot and we work on percentages, you'll hear the testimony that we're basically looking at 20.2% FAR over this entire lot. Now, we've also noticed, because we've had an objector raise an issue that we will address during the course of our presentation, that if the board deems it necessary, the applicant would seek a conditional use approval for a community residence having more than 6 persons, excluding resident staff. Here, the proposal is for 7 residents and for conditional use approval for proposed parking spaces. We are proposing 1 parking space for each proposed resident. We're coming up with a total number of 8. It's our position that RSIS standards prevail, and the RSIS standards only require 7. You have an ordinance that could require 9, but our position is that RSIS supersedes any other requirement. And it's also our position that under NJS 40:55D-66.2, a community residence is defined for persons with developmental disabilities, and it's permitted in any residential zone. And when you permit it in a residential zone, you cannot, any municipality, it's our position, cannot impose it as a conditional use because, again, the municipal land use law supersedes an ordinance that would change the intent and purpose of the requirement for a community residence in a residential zone. Effectively, a borough could zone out the community residence, which is contrary to the intent and purpose of the municipal land use law. And the other thing that we have to recognize that with a community residence group home, it's not for us to prove that's inherently beneficial. The term group home is part of the definition in the definition section in D4 of the definitions under the municipal land use law. So what we are proposing is inherently beneficial use. Not only inherently beneficial, but it's something that the governing body, this mayor and council in this town, has determined belongs on this piece of property by virtue of getting into an agreement with the applicant for purposes of providing this housing at this location. It's our position that the standards for that conditional use, therefore, in your ordinance, and I'll recite it, 240-8.4, is an improper ordinance as far as the requirement making this a conditional use. But if the board were to determine in the alternative that they believe the conditional use does prevail, we are willing to be able to show you under the pertinent case law guidelines that the intent and purpose of what we're doing here would meet the conditional use. Your standard for a conditional use, as I trust you are aware, is not that the use is not permitted at all, but rather that there's a condition imposed that an applicant just needs to show, much lesser standard of proof, just needs to show that the project as proposed, the application as proposed, even though there's a condition imposed, the applicant can eliminate any concern under that condition by virtue of what's being done. For instance, by way of example, if you come to the conclusion that there's additional parking necessary, that's because it's what your ordinance imposes, not what the RSIS standards impose or not what the applicant proposes, we're prepared to show you, based on the testimony of Mr. Toronto, that the amount of parking that's required for this type of use falls well below the guidelines that are set forth in your ordinance. Why? Because you'll hear Mr. Toronto testify as to the other locations they have, the other uses they have. This is not their first type of project like this, that the amount of parking that is required is well below the standards even set forth in the RSIS standards. As I stated, the property requires a lot area of 7,500 square feet, and this piece of property has 19,943 square feet. It has a width of 248 feet, which is well beyond the 75-foot requirement. So we're dealing with a very large, oversized lot. And yes, on the basis of that, in order to accommodate what's been promulgated and placed in the agreement between the Borough of Oradell and the applicant for the 7 bedroom units, at that point, the requirements that are necessary to meet state standards requires the dwelling units to be the size that we are proposing. It is submitted that as far as the side yard setback is concerned, which is the C1 variance, we have a very unusual shaped lot. And you'll hear the testimony from our planner that if this were a rectangular lot, a four-sided lot, so to speak, that we would not be, at this point, seeking that sideline setback variance for the combined side yards. With that said, the overage in coverage we submit is somewhat de minimis. It's 42.4, where 40% is the maximum permitted. Realizing again that when an ordinance was prepared for the R4 zone, it's basically taken into account a number of different uses, but the community residence style use requires a parking lot that's a little bit more than what other uses in an R4 zone is. And that's really where we come about. It's kind of a dual-edged sword. We want to provide the parking that's required by the RSIS standards, and we can actually add one more than what's required by RSIS. But in doing so, we go over a bit in impervious coverage. But we have got a drainage scheme that you'll hear from our engineer that will accommodate any of the concerns you would have for impervious coverage on a property, and we will have a landscaping plan testified to that will show that this landscaping will create a very nice streetscape. Because recognize, and you've seen in your exhibits that you've had accompanying the application, that the type of building that we have is not an institutionalized building. It is a building that the applicant has constructed in many other municipalities, and it has a residential character to it. It has a residential style roof. It has a typically hardy board style planking for siding. It's also taken into consideration, although there's an infringement of the side yard setbacks, the second floor has been creatively placed to be smaller on the roof, if you will, of the first floor, so that it's not an imposing too high of a building as it pertains to the side yard setbacks. The overall request also for this site plan, sum and substance with it, will be a soil movement application. And we stipulate that we can meet all of the requirements under your soil movement ordinance as far as erosion control and drainage is concerned. So, in essence, what we are requesting is the preliminary and final site plan approval, the variance approval that we will walk you through step by step, and at the same time, with that, soil movement approval as part of the application. Unless there are any questions of me, I would call Mr. Toronto to testify as to an overview of what is being proposed.
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Toronto?
Mr. Whitaker, will you have any exhibits with Mr.
Yes.
Toronto?
Here's what I have, and I thought...
I'd like when each witness, before they begin, we mark whatever you
Well,
prefer
here's
to
what I
mark,
did.
so we have.
I took the liberty of creating an exhibit list.
Oh, good.
So at that point, we can go through them, scattered going back and forth.
Okay. And I just don't want to interrupt the witnesses.
Chairman, I just want to let you know that notice was provided and everything has been checked.
Yes, I've also checked the notices. Everything's in order.
Yeah. Get that, thank you.
Mr. Wires. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Toronto, would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in this proceeding shall be true, so help you God.
I do.
And for the record, you please state your full name and spell your last name.
Sure. Thomas, Thomas, Toronto, Toronto.
Thank you.
Mr. Toronto, I'd like you to give a brief overview of your background and your affiliation with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Good evening, everyone. BCW Madeline is a not-for-profit affordable housing developer working in partnership and full collaboration with local municipalities throughout northern New Jersey to address the individual community affordable housing needs of these municipalities. We've completed a bit over 40 projects. I think we're at 43 right now over the last 20 years. And we have built homes for seniors, for veterans, for families, and certainly for people with special needs and specifically folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In fact, more than half of our projects are what's considered supportive housing for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And a quick note on parking, we, of course, track the number of residents in supportive housing who may use cars, because some do. And our run rate, if you will, is 1 out of 10 residents actually use a car. None of the residents in any of our shared homes or group homes actually drive. So sometimes in the independent living apartments, which would be above the group home in this instance, there could be a resident who drives a car. But again, that run rate is 1 out of 10. Our projects are well built. We utilize, as Mr. Whitaker mentioned, very durable materials. They are designed to fit the design characteristics of each of the communities and the neighborhoods that we are building in. And I believe you will see that very clearly when the architect testifies. We build well, and we build carefully, and we maintain our projects over time. The residents of the homes on whose behalf we build deserve nothing less, and the neighbors that surround us deserve nothing less as well. We've been working, as Mr. Whitaker alluded to, with collaboratively for some time now with the governing body here in Oradell to identify a suitable site for an affordable housing project and for a supportive housing project, particularly to help fulfill the borough's affordable housing obligations. And the reason for the focus on supportive housing is that there is a population within your community desirous of and capable of living in the kind of housing that we build. In fact, 2 now former Oradell residents who grew up here live in housing projects that we've built in neighboring communities. We feel that this project location is absolutely ideal. It is obviously proximate to downtown amenities and services. It has easy access to transportation, to employment opportunities, to recreational opportunities, and it's in a great town with a true spirit and sense of community, and I believe an established sensitivity and sense of support for individuals with special needs. With that, I'd gladly answer any questions the board may have.
Well, just before that, just a couple of other questions. Your organization has entered into an agreement with the Borough of Oradell called the Transfer and Development Agreement that you alluded to, correct?
That is correct.
I show you a copy of a January 5th, 2020 agreement, and that's the agreement you've entered into with the borough?
That is correct.
We have that marked as A12.
It's A12.
Yes. And these are the signatures of the mayor at the time, as well as you on behalf, and Shari De Palma on behalf of the applicant.
That is correct.
And is it true and correct that this application is basically the application that is required under this agreement with the mayor and council in moving forward to get site plan approval, soil movement approval for the construction of these units?
That is correct.
And the agreement itself actually states that it is to have 4 units, and then it was to have with 4 one-bedroom units, and then to have on top 3 two-bedroom units, and then that was modified by virtue of the master plan provisions that came forward later. Isn't that correct?
That is correct also.
I show you what's been marked, or I will mark as A14, the 2022 amendment to the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan. And this one here provides that, and you've seen this document, correct?
I have.
And this provides for that there'll be 4 one-bedroom units, and then there'll be 1 bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment, and it also provides a certain amount of funding that will be coming from the Housing Trust with Oradell.
That is correct.
And it states in here that this project, it will be used to be towards the unmet need of the borough, correct?
That is correct.
And again, the application that we're submitting is in accordance with the agreement, judgment of repose with Fair Share Housing with Oradell, and follows the requirements that are, or the provisions that are set forth in the master plan document that we've marked as A14.
Yes, it does.
No further questions.
Okay. Caroline, do you have any questions of the witness?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a couple, since I guess we have to repeat a few things from our last meeting.
Repeat everything.
Repeat everything. Sure. So can you please, so the proposal is a 4-bedroom group home on the first floor with 2 apartments on the second floor, correct?
That is correct.
Right. So, but there is going to be some interaction, correct, between the second floor residents and the first floor group home. Can you explain that, please?
Sure. We hope for and we plan for and we build common space so that there is interaction between the residents of the independent living units and the residents of the group home. This hybrid model that we've created actually encourages the mixing of the populations within the continuum of folks who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we're not building a standalone group home, nor independent living apartments. We're combining the two and creating a sense of community, and it's a model that we've deployed and built in many neighboring communities successfully.
So you've successfully done this elsewhere?
Yes.
In the state, or in the state, in the county?
We're under construction right now in Fairlawn with the same model. We've completed in Wyckoff a project like this, in Allendale. Let me think. Cresskill, most recently, just recently CO'd. And we have outside of the community, outside of Bergen County, I should say, we're under construction in Rumson. We completed a project in Foreign Park that mixes supportive housing and group homes. There's probably a dozen, I'm going to say, similar models.
But this is all part of sort of the umbrella of supportive housing, just different levels, maybe is the wrong word, just different abilities?
I would say, Caroline, in the past, there was a distinction between building a group home and building independent living apartments. You built one or the other. What we have found is when we do that in a community like Oradell, it serves one slice of the population that requires, a shared home or group home support, and it leaves out the person who does not need as much support and could live in what we call independent living. So we combine the two in order to serve a broader cross-section of the community.
And all of these units will be eligible for affordable housing credits in some form. This was the housing element that was quoted as the third round plan. And so that is, that's where this was anticipated, this project.
That's correct. And I think also to take advantage of the incentives that are offered through the affordable housing regulations that treat a bedroom of supportive housing as a unit. So as a consequence, I'm leading the witness, I suppose. But as a consequence, the municipality will receive greater benefit, 2 for 1 for this project than if it were, for example, a 4-unit affordable housing family project.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. With respect to group homes and supportive housing, the unit of credit is the bedroom. So Mr. Taranto is, of course, very well versed in this and speaking accurately. And with respect to income levels, and the reason that I'm asking this is not to pry, but to because the borough is responsible for providing both moderate, actually 3 different levels, moderate, low, and very low income affordable housing units. Typically, the group home units I've found will be what's considered very low income, typically because of the residents who live there. What about the 2 apartments?
Typically, what we find in supportive housing is that it's low and very low. Unusual to have anyone with a moderate income. And more typically that everyone is in a very low, in terms of the indexing to the income standards required for affordable housing, fall into the very low category, occasionally into the low.
Okay, so low and very low income, which the borough does need to meet its obligation, needs to have a certain amount. Actually, 13% of all affordable units need to be very low income. It's a requirement for all municipalities. How many staff members do you anticipate would be on site, and are there certain shifts, and how many people there each shift throughout the week and the weekend?
The group home really behaves like any residential home in the community. Folks leave during the day and attend different kinds of services, day programs, a variety of different services outside of the home. And as a consequence, the home would be empty during the day. The only exception to that would be if one of the individuals was sick, in which case naturally they would stay home and a staff person would remain with them. In the evening, there will be 2 staff there, and then in the overnight, also 2 awake staff. None of the staff will live or sleep in the group home. On the weekends, there's a full range of recreational opportunities. It's actually something you see, but folks are out. They're at parks. They're taking trips. So very similar to any kind of residential setting in any of the neighborhoods here in Oradell, with the exception that folks are out and about much more frequently, I would say. And then in terms of the apartments, the independent living apartments, it's not uncommon for folks to work. So again, they're leaving during the day and then coming back in the evening. And the operative term here, of course, is independence. So folks have the ability to live on their own safely and securely. They may require some services. Someone who might perhaps accompany them to the bank to help with banking. They may have a job coach. They may have someone who comes and helps them with meal preparation. It really depends on their particular diagnosis and what their support needs are. But the important consideration is that they don't require overnight support.
So while there may be staff associated with the apartments, it would depend upon the individual situation of who's living there and what that person's needs might be.
Yeah. Yes. So what we have found over time is that folks who move into independent living units and apartments may have a certain prescribed number of hours of service, but once they're living on their own and independently, those hours tend to decline, and in some cases, folks have no services whatsoever, such as the success of the transition.
Okay. Back to the group home, you used a term in the evening, you said there's 2 awake staff?
Correct.
Does that mean that there's more than 2 staff, but only 2 are awake, or?
No, there's a minimum of 2 staff required, and on the overnights, there's no more than 2, but there are 2 that are required, and we refer to them as awake staff. And the service provider has a full retinue or itinerary or a list of things and things to be accomplished, paperwork, other kinds of things while the residents are sleeping. So we're very careful. There's cameras in place, so there's close supervision. So they are indeed awake staff.
Do you think that the parking that's proposed here, based on the size of the group home and the number of independent apartments on the second level, do you think the parking is sufficient compared to your other group homes, compared to other similar developments that have the hybrid environment with the group home on the first floor and the apartments on the second floor?
I do. I think it's adequate. More than adequate.
That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thank you.
Dave, do you have any questions?
Just I guess a quick question as far as, so I know on the proposal, I think the independent units, I think one is a 1-bedroom, one's a 2-bedroom. Like, how does that function? Just out of curiosity.
Those would be 2 unrelated individuals. So as part of the resident selection process, we do quite a bit of research and vetting. And we look for folks with complementary skills, if you will. We meet with families, we meet with the individuals. Probably the most careful and most difficult process is creating roommates. So that's why we spend a considerable amount of time on the 2-bedroom units. And the 2-bedroom units, one of the things that we look for, the characteristics that we look for, are folks obviously who are compatible. and also build off of each other's skills, because what we find is that lessens the requirement for services.
I have no further questions, Chairman.
Steve?
Nothing, Chairman.
Bob?
Just one question. Mr. Toronto, we're talking about 7 units of credit for the borough, 7 actual physical units of 14-unit credit, a 2-for-1
That's correct.
credit. How are the occupants or residents selected? Do you work with the borough's administrative agent, or do you do the process on your own?
We'll work with the borough's administrative agent from the perspective of regulatory compliance. With regard to the tenant or resident selection process, we have a pretty large database of parents and guardians and individuals who are interested in our housing, including some here in Oradell. So the vetting is, folks, of course, have to first have diagnosis eligibility. And with the diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disabilities, that's pretty broad. That can be autism, that can be Down syndrome, it can also be MS, cerebral palsy, and literally dozens more. So first, of course, is diagnosis compatibility or compliance, and then secondly, to meet the affordability and income requirements. And then after that, it's an interview process, looking for all of the kinds of behaviors that support independence, and then working with the service provider on the group home, looking to make sure that the 4 residents will live compatibly and meaningfully and well and thrive together.
I know you've done this many times in your other developments that I've personally had some experience with as well. Just a question to have it on the record in terms of assuring the borough that they will get the 14 units of credit in connection with its affordable obligation, which is a significant credit, particularly when it's a 2-for-1 bonus.
Yeah.
In terms of how you provide the appropriate certification to the administrative agent of the borough, I think it's Piazza and Associates is probably our administrative agent. I assume you do that and you provide that information?
Yeah, we work with, Piazza is one of the more prominent administrative agents, so we regularly interact with them. So there is an annual income certification process. So all of the attendant details associated with making sure that the affordability or the compliance with affordability controls is in place at all times.
I assume the same process is done when a tenant or an occupant vacates and a new resident moves in.
Yeah, on that rare occasion when we have a vacancy, it's immediately filled. In fact, our experience has been with all the supportive housing that the residents are selected before CO.
You probably have a waiting list usually.
We do.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
And just to supplement that question, the A12, the Transfer and Development Agreement, requires Bergen County United Way to do all of the things that Mr. Reagan just talked about. It's in the agreement with the borough already.
Thank you. Once again, we're still getting static at OPTV. If everyone would check their phones, tablets, watches, any other devices, please, please, please turn them off. Thank you. All right. Members of the board, does anybody have any questions?
Let me just ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as the ongoing, assuming the project is approved and goes forward, who's responsible for the ongoing maintenance and safety at the facility? Does that become an issue of the borough, or is that your organization that would maintain that thereafter?
So on the property management side, the care of the property, that's our responsibility. So cutting the grass, tending to the landscaping, replacing anything that's broken, plowing the snow, all of that is our obligation. Within the home, it's further our obligation to make sure that the sprinkler system, the fire suppression system is charged and ready. All the safety features within the home, also with the physical plant, if you will, of the residents are under our purview. The operator or service provider for the group home, and we work with a small group of service providers that we have experience with over time. They need to be licensed and recognized by the state of New Jersey, and they follow a regimen of safety protocols and inspections on an ongoing basis to be in conformity with all of the health and safety guidelines that the state of New Jersey, through the Department of Developmental Disabilities, require for shared homes or group homes.
Thank you.
And do we have any other questions from the board? No?
I have a question. So, thank you, Mr. Toronto. When you're evaluating applicants, to what extent, if any, do you factor in whether the applicant or their immediate family are residents of Oradell?
So we look very closely, and what we have found over time with all of our supportive housing is that the residents tend to come from the immediate community or the community that surrounds. So discretion for selection is within our view, within our purview, along with the service provider. So one of the measures that we look for is, does someone already have connections and a network in the local community? Do they have a system of support that surrounds them? These are important measures to help assure success for that residents when they make the transition, often from from their family home into a different residential setting. So that is a high or an important consideration in terms of our selection.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Actually, this is a good way of illustrating a point. I was going to ask a question about giving preference to people who are former residents of Oradell. It's already been asked, so there's no point in me asking that question over again. That's something to consider because it's going to come time now for me to open this up to those of you in the audience. A couple of rules. First, raise your hand. Don't just walk up. Just raise your hand and I'll call on people. I'll call on everybody who wants to speak and ask questions. If the question you want to ask has already been asked, don't say to yourself, well, I know it's been asked, but I didn't ask it. It's been the important thing is to get the information to the board. So if the question has been asked, we've heard the answer. If, however, there's something that can be built upon, by all means, come up and ask it. Don't censor yourself. Just don't belabor a point. And, of course, be courteous, as Diane always said. So, with that, I will ask if there's any questions of the witness relating to the testimony that the witness has given. Do I see any hands? All right. Yes, you first. Yes. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
So my name is Amanda Kronmeyer. I'm an attorney with Herald Law, representing 4 property owners. I can list them now.
Yes, please. You won't have to listen in the future, but...
So Nancy Kostopoulos, that's Block 222, Lot 2, 240 Maple Ave. I don't know if you need all of that or not. Leslie and Peter Johnson, Akiyoshi and Akikiko Kakehi, and Monica, I'm going to butcher it, Sezpek, and Jarek Kurak.
Okay. And since you're representing those individuals, they will not come up to ask questions. Everything that their participation goes through you.
Correct, sir. So I do have a number of questions to ask. Mr. Toronto, you didn't conduct a survey of existing facilities in Oradell, right?
No, we did not.
And did you determine that there was a specific need or demand for a facility of this nature in this area?
Excuse me. Overall, there are estimated to be something like 40,000 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state of New Jersey. When the state of New Jersey Department of Developmental Disabilities kept a waiting list of folks eligible for residential placement, it numbered over 8,000 people. So
Excuse me, could you speak into the mic a little bit?
Sure. So I think as a general condition of housing availability, folks with intellectual and developmental disability are, the need is great. And certainly by virtue of our interaction with parents and guardians, throughout the community, throughout the county, and the fact that our residents are occupied upon almost immediately, and that we have far more applications than we have available spaces, the demand is greater than the supply.
But you didn't necessarily focus on this area in particular, this lot, this block, 223, Lot 5, in terms of that analysis?
No, it's not our practice to conduct that kind of survey.
And who is going to be controlling, ensuring that only people with developmental disabilities will be living in these units?
As the developer, sponsor, landlord, it is our responsibility, codified by the agreements that we have with the borough. Secondly, it needs to pass muster with the state's Housing Mortgage Finance Agency, which is helping to underwrite the project. It's a requirement of their underwriting that the folks fit both the diagnosis and the income eligibility requirements as a condition of their underwriting. We also have an investment from the Bergen County Community Development Office through their home program, and the same set of controls and requirements exist for them, that the stated purpose of the housing as supportive housing be followed as a condition of funding.
And will each bedroom be occupied by only one person?
That's correct, only one individual.
All right. And how often will food deliveries occur per week?
That I can't tell you. Typically in the shared home group home, meals are prepared in a congregate setting. So I doubt that there would be any food deliveries. In the independent living, given the era that we now live in, I wouldn't be surprised if there would be Grubhub or whatever some of the food delivery services might be. But we're not seeing in the other units that's particularly excessive. But I would think it would behave like any normal residential home might, with the exception being that the group home typically is meal preparation is part of the process, if you will, of the communal experience.
And that would be provided by that service provider working with the group home in the extent of obtaining the groceries and...
Typically, that's also part of the experience, which is the residents will go to ShopRite along with the service provider. It's part of their experience of living in the shared home.
And in your experience, you haven't experienced any of these group home service providers ordering groceries to the home? They tend to go out?
Yes, as far as I've seen, it's been my experience that the things that are delivered might be a Friday night pizza party, that kind of thing.
And you might have already said this, but for the independent living apartments, are staff members assisting those units?
In some cases, there can be staff who come to the home to accompany the independent living resident to their job as a job coach, or to accompany them to the supermarket or to banking, or their first time taking the train or the bus, that kind of service. It's hard to predict until we know who the residents are and have a sort of a sense of what their service requirements are, what their current what services are currently being delivered. But that's sort of the range of what occurs with the independent living units.
And would those service providers at any point be coming to the home, parking at the home, throughout this provided service period?
Yeah, our experience is that a service provider will come and pick someone up. Sometimes if they're associated with an agency, the agency has a SUV or a van. Sometimes it's an individual who comes with their own car, and the residents will leave with them in that car. In some cases, and as I mentioned earlier, we do have residents who drive, so they may park there. So it's pretty much a broad cross-section.
And can apartments be sublet in this kind of scenario? And so you testified that 8 parking spaces are adequate, is that right? And that's because typically the group home, none of those residents are drivers.
That is correct.
So then the parking is therefore for visitors?
Visitors, family, guardians, service providers who may come.
Got it. So then none of the 4 group home individuals will be permitted to have a car on site?
It is, to my knowledge, there isn't a resident of a group home anywhere in New Jersey who has the ability to drive.
And will there be any sort of restriction on the number of visitors each resident may have throughout the day?
In the case of the group home, because of its communal living, there'll be permission-based rules, I imagine, set by the house and the residents and the service provider. about when folks come to visit, because it's a shared living arrangement, obviously. In the case of the group home, in the case of the 2 apartments, leases will be in place that talk about folks being able to certainly enjoy, the space that they're living in, but also require, quiet periods, not excessive, excessive visitation, things of that nature.
And then, so as a licensed community residence for individuals with developmental disabilities, that's what this proposed project is, correct?
The group home will be a licensed residential setting, correct?
So then the independent living units will not be licensed?
They will not be.
Okay. So then the group home component of this project is required to comply with state regulations, correct?
Yeah, there is a licensing process that the home itself will go through with the State Department of Developmental Disability and the service provider as well. The service provider will already be licensed, but they will have to create documents around this new home and how it will operate to the satisfaction of the State Department of Developmental Disabilities.
And will that be for the entirety of the home, both the first and the second floor?
The apartments won't be licensed, but by virtue of the agreement that we have with the borough and with the funders, the individuals who live there will be clients, if you will, of the State Department of Developmental Disabilities, but won't have the kind of benefit package that folks in a group home would have. So as a consequence, the apartments will, of course, be inspected. Most of the folks, in fact, I would anticipate that both residents, well, 3 residents of the 2 apartments will come with housing vouchers through the state's supportive housing connection, which provides housing supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who live in independent living settings, and that comes with an inspection, as you might expect, of the actual space that they will occupy.
Mm-hmm. And so at this point in time, do you have any sort of emergency plan and set for these residences?
So the home and the apartments will have a fire suppression system. There will be a keyed entry system from a security perspective. It is our practice to meet with all of the uniformed personnel, have them visit the home when it's near completion, introduce the service provider and the residents to the uniformed personnel as well, both for the safety of the individuals and so that the emergency services personnel have a sense of who's going to be living in the home and what their service needs are. We have a full range of activities that we follow and procedures that we follow to ensure that folks who live there will live safely and securely over time.
And in terms of complying with any sort of regulatory requirement for safety plans, that would be from the provider, is that right?
So the service provider is required to provide an evacuation plan, and there are actual fire drills that are conducted and timed. So there's a full range of service or emergency preventative procedures that need to be in place as a condition of licensing.
Okay. So I'm just going to shift a little bit to the the developers agreement. You said multiple times that you entered into the agreement with the borough, I believe that was January 5th, 2020 or so. I want to call it 8/12. And then, so has that had any amendments since that point?
I believe it has. I can't tell you that I am completely familiar with all the paragraphs of the document from 4.5 years ago. But we did modify, the original intent was, as has been stated, was for a larger development, and we pulled back from that in order to better fit the site.
And thank you. So You said you weren't familiar with each of the paragraphs of that agreement. If I ask about a specific paragraph 5, for instance.
Have it here.
So, to my knowledge, paragraph 5 indicates that the conveyance of the property is subject to the borough obtaining final, non-appealable certification of its affordable housing plan within 6 months of this agreement. That was not obtained by the borough, right? Final, non-appealable certification of the compliance plan?
I couldn't say.
Okay. And in terms of the 2022, you said that you modified this agreement. This is coming from the 2022 Affordable Housing Plan. You testified a moment ago about the intent was for a larger development in that agreement, but it was modified to a smaller development.
Yes, I can't say that I modified it.
Yes, but that stems from the 2022 Affordable Housing Fair Share Plan. That amendment to the Fair Share Plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, our engagement with the borough is collaborative and in partnership. So we basically work with the borough's professionals and shape and craft the plan per the needs of the municipality while they're negotiating with the various entities. We're working with another municipality right now that originally had a plan for 14 units as an example, and have asked if we can do 12 instead because it fits better into their, into the current rubric that they're working with, and we're fine with that.
Mm. And that plan has not yet been adopted by the borough. Is that correct?
I do not know.
The 2022 Affordable Housing Plan Amendment, that has not been adopted by this planning board.
It was adopted by the planning board.
This board wouldn't adopt it.
It's the Board of
respectfully.
Adjustment.
This is the Board of Adjustment, but the planning board did adopt it, is my recollection. The planning board did adopt it at a public hearing.
So, to my knowledge, the only document that's available on the website is a draft version of the plan. I don't know if that A14 exhibit that's been submitted to this board has an adoption date on it. So, to my knowledge,
It was adopted. So, Mr. Chairman, do you want me to answer this?
Yes, please.
I don't want to jump in on, I don't want to step
No,
on
let's get
Mr.
there.
Whitaker's toes over here.
Nope, you're never stepping on my toes. Go ahead.
But I believe that there's a resolution date of June 6, 2022. If what's on the, I can't, the website is not under my domain.
Mm-hmm. But that plan, I don't know if Mr. Whitaker, but that plan has not been endorsed or approved by the courts. Is that correct? Not yet had a final compliance hearing.
Yeah.
In light of the ongoing litigation right now.
I think we should have the planner address that.
Okay.
No, there hasn't. I have not participated in a final compliance hearing or fairness hearing. I don't recall what you asked, but I have not participated in either.
Understood. Thank you. And then just one last bit, if I have the. So, have you ever ordered or received a title examination report for this property?
Yes.
Yes. And did that show you any encumbrances on the property that would inhibit your ability to develop it?
Nothing that would inhibit our ability to develop it.
So, but it showed, presumably as depicted on your plans, the drainage easement, I believe a 30-foot wide drainage easement, as well as a 15-foot wide Hackensack easement. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer to our engineer who keeps us out of trouble in terms of, frequently keeps us out of trouble in terms of the sites that we build.
Understood. And you also had a survey ordered for this property, right?
We did.
And did you review the deeds to the property? You said you received them. Did you happen to review them?
I did not. I don't recall anything specific about the deeds. Our real estate attorney reviewed them.
Understood.
The borough's attorney reviewed them as well. But I don't, nothing comes to mind or jumps out about the review that posed any difficulties. There was, as you, I'm sure you're aware, some work done to quiet title when there was some, what will be the correct word, some ambiguity about the property line, which was achieved by the borough.
I could stipulate there was a scrivener's error on a deed. The borough attorney at the time took an action, Superior Court, I believe Chancery Division, and threw a suit to quiet title to resolve the issues.
And a final judgment was entered in that case?
That's correct.
Understood. And so, in your opinion, this proposal won't have any effect on the easements? You said you're deferring to your engineer about the easements.
That's his answer.
All right. And just one last, or two last ones, I should say. Did you at all consider reducing the scale of the project with a structure that's more compliant with the code?
No, we did not. We felt that we rely upon our professionals and James Vergona, our architect, who has worked with us on many projects, to craft a residential setting that fits the neighborhood, fits the lot, and also fits meets the requirements of the State Department of Developmental Disabilities with regards to size of bedrooms, storage units, width of doorways, all of the attendant details associated with making sure a group home is appropriate and fits the design standards of the state.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Well, I know there was a hand raised over there first. Was that the two of you were sitting together? Okay.
Yeah, my question was addressed in the group of questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir? Come up, state your name and address.
Olson, it's 50 Beverly Road. Good evening. Mr. Toronto. Will there be any additional money that you need for the project from the Oradell Trust Fund, other than the
Objection.
I don't see how this
75,000?
is relevant, Mr. Chairman.
The question is not relevant to this case.
It's not relevant to who?
To this case. Whether
Wouldn't it be relevant to the town? How much money they have to
Sir.
give them?
we are here to determine whether to grant a variance as requested.
Okay.
Funding is not relevant.
All right. Next case. The residents. Do you have a priority on what residents you would have first crack at the apartments? Would they be like veterans with disabilities? Would that be first crack?
This is for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Veterans we have certainly built for and will continue to build, but they would not. That is not a developmental. An injury, a war injury, for example, would not fit the diagnosis for this particular supportive housing project.
So you're saying that veterans might not have developmental disabilities?
No. Asked and answered. It doesn't fit within the parameters of what they're proposing here, under the guidelines. He's answered the question.
I don't understand that. Would you explain that a little bit more?
He has already answered that the type of injuries that a soldier or a veteran would have doesn't fit within the guidelines for development disabilities for these apartment occupancies. Bergen County United Ways has other facilities for veterans. This would not be one of them.
So psychological problems of veterans coming home from the war?
Not fit within the guidelines of this type of housing.
It's not fit. Okay. All right. These Friday night pizza parties that they might be having, will visitors be allowed to stay overnight with friends and relatives?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Not seeing a show of hands, I will close the questions to the public. Sir, your next witness.
Redirect to Mr. Toronto.
Please. Oh, hold on. Oh, okay. Come on, Bob. Don't be shy. When I ask for, show of hands, show your hands. State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Kelly Castro, 521 Mildred Place, and my questions for Mr. Toronto are, generally speaking, do your residents have children, and do they utilize the school systems?
No.
Okay, so 14 credits that won't put undue stress and volume on our very busy school system. And then you said you do due diligence to select residents and your service providers. And then I guess, how do you ensure consistent compliance with that? Are you guys audited annually? Are there HUD audits that you're subject to, or does United Way have an oversight over that?
So on the affordability side, there is an annual certification of the person's income in order to be in compliance with affordability. A diagnosis of an intellectual or developmental disability, unfortunately, does not change.
Right.
So if someone is admitted and has that diagnosis, that is a lifelong, circumstance. So that is not changed.
Okay.
Folks leave because they may move, or they follow their family, but typically when a resident comes in, the only annual recertification that occurs is around income.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try one more time. Show of hands. Yes, please. Name and address, please.
My name is Alexis Absey. I live at 642 Ridgewood Avenue Road. I don't know what it is in this town. My question is a little bit odd in that I guess I have concern when you're building something of this size. I've been told that it's supposed to fit right into the neighborhood. Yes, it looks nice, but there are no houses that are this size on that street.
What's the question?
That I'm aware of. My concern is that the people that live around this house, there's going to be a lot of work done. Soil's going to be removed. There are some challenges with the way that street is and the things that are happening now.
Sam, I think we're getting into a statement. I'm going to have to swear the
So my
witnesses.
question is,
Give you a question.
what happens after the fact when this home is built, when people are residents, to those that are affected by the building after the fact? There have been times in our town when we've been told, oh, we don't need a dumpster. Building things have gone through.
You've asked the question. Let him answer.
Fine.
Thank you.
I don't know if he knows the real question.
With respect to the period of construction, we will operate in conformity with Oradell's rules around trips and all of the attendant details that assure that construction happens within certain hours, certain days of the week, et cetera. With regard to after, we're not leaving. We will still maintain the home. And the only way I can answer your question is to tell you that we've been asked to come back and build again in many of the communities that we've already built in. Tenafly, Ramsey, Mawa, Fairlawn. I could go on. I don't think our organization would be asked to come back to build again if we did not operate the homes that already existed, in a reasonable and highly professional manner.
I'm not asking about the operation of the home. I'm asking about the physical changes that are going to be made in that area to what is currently there, and residents that have lived in this town for a very long time. And there are issues that will come about and could cause more problems down the road.
This is testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm asking, is there anything that you can put in place so that those residents' homes are not affected by this?
Improper question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Question answered.
Well,
Question is vague. And
yeah, I understand. No, once again, for everybody, I don't wish to be rude, but I will be if I have to be. Please don't put me in that position. At the end of the hearing, everybody gets their opportunity to come up make their observations and the statements. You'll be speaking for or against this, whatever you want to say that's relevant to that. And it will be closer to the time at which the board has to make its decision. So it may have a greater weight than coming up now and making a statement. This is the time for questions relating to the applicant's witnesses' testimony. We don't want to just say anything. I mean, he hasn't testified as to the number of bricks in the Empire State Building, so we're not going to ask that question of this witness. All right, Mr. Latunis, you have your hand raised. Please come up again, and once again, state your name and address, and make it relevant.
Well, it's in 50 Beverly Road. The reason I came up again is because I want to know that you are actually ruling out veterans in this project?
Questions previously
Yes or no?
answered, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, he has answered the question that he's neither ruling in or out veterans. He has stated that a war wound does not result in their being
Well, I'm
able
not
to...
asking about...
no, it's my turn to
Okay,
speak.
go ahead.
He has said that a war wound would not qualify someone to be in this residence. There are other residences in which they will be able to accommodate that. This is for people with learning disabilities, if I understood the testimony. Developmental disabilities. So if it's highly unlikely that a veteran will have a developmental disability as a result of their service, because if they had it, as a result of being a veteran, because if they had it, they wouldn't have been accepted into the military in the first place. So your question has been asked and answered. As much as you're dissatisfied with the answer, that is the answer. If you don't have another question, please sit down.
Well, what could happen after they come home, after the veterans come home?
And it has nothing to do with them being a veteran, if I'm understanding you correctly. Would you like to... You've gotten your question asked and answered. Please, do you have another question? If not, please sit down.
I just think that veterans should be included, that's all.
That statement is for the end of the hearing. Do we have any other question? Not seeing a show of hands, now I will close that to the public. It's 8:41. We're going to try for a break at about 9, so your next witness, keep in mind you have about 20 minutes.
Just redirect Mr. Toronto.
Oh, please,
just to-
please.
Mr. Toronto, you've testified that you've been involved with the construction, development, operation of over 40 of these type of facilities. And that's correct?
Yes,
And it's throughout various communities in Bergen County.
and outside of Bergen.
And these facilities that you've built in other group homes in residential zones, have you had any problems with them as far as issues regarding neighbors or complaints or anything like that with all that you've had?
No,
You stated earlier that with these developmentally disabled residents, that one of the goals with the organization is to get them integrated with the community. Isn't that correct?
correct.
And on the basis of that, is it correct to say that there's been people living in these other residences, these group homes that you have in fact taken on jobs, have worked at the library, have worked in ShopRite and stores like that?
School system, yeah, we, folks are active participants in the local community. They work in the Dunkin' Donuts, the ShopRite, the food stores, the coffee shops. We have residents who work in the administrative offices of the high schools and elementary schools.
So, question came up about your involvement with the, quote, need of this in the borough of Oradell. This was basically an agreement and a marriage, so to speak, between you as a provider for this type of service and a governing body that wanted to have this type of plan, this type of housing within their community.
Correct.
And correct to say that this is not out of the ordinary with the other communities surrounding us.
No, not at all. I mean, we only work in the spirit of partnership and collaboration, by invitation, by referral. So we work hand in hand with the governing bodies and the professionals of the communities where we go.
And much of what goes on in this type of a group home, the pizza delivery, people coming to visit, very similar to what people do in individual residences, correct?
That is we do everything we possibly can to make sure that this behaves like a single-family home, if you will. where folks have a Super Bowl party or they have a pizza party, and it behaves no differently than any other house on the block.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Okay. There was additional questions. Does anybody have any question relating only to what you've just heard? Not seeing a show of hands, I'll close it. Sir, the next witness.
Call Mr. Vergona.
It's now
Mr. Vergona,
8:45.
would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this proceeding shall be true, so help you God.
I do.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vergona has previously been qualified before various boards I represent as an architect. I'd recommend he be deemed qualified without the need for any additional testimony.
We do accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Vergona, just to qualify that a little bit further, have you been involved with, from an architectural standpoint, in developing and designing this type of housing?
Yes, I have.
And you're familiar with the rules, regulations, and guidelines for this type of housing?
Yes, I am.
In fact, if I recall in prior testimony in other towns, you actually took an exam to be qualified as an architect in this type of housing.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
Yes.
Many years ago.
34 years ago, yes.
Okay. So with that said, you've been given...
I'm sorry. 31 years ago.
So with that said, I'd like you to take the plans that you've submitted, that we have as an exhibit, it's up there, and I would like you to explain
There's a microphone there if you would.
what the assignment is for you as an architect in doing one of these. What is it that you have to do in this design, and how did it get accomplished here?
Excuse me, Mr. Whitaker, is this A3 on your list? Or is it A8?
A8.
Okay, thank you.
It's the most recent plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess, as in any project, our goal is to try to start with the analysis of a site and work from the site, its location, its characteristics, and then begin to design a building that would best suit that property and that site and the residents or clients from which we are designing. Okay. And in this case, because the site is unique in its shape and its size, we had to accommodate a structure that would account for the residents and their needs. We were tasked with a group home and independent living units, as Mr. Toronto has described. The property is located in the R4 zone in Oradell, and it's at the bend of Gunther Avenue and, I guess, Brookside Avenue, where they meet. The property is over 19,900 square feet. The minimum lot size in the zone is 7,500 square feet. I'm going to refer to some of the drawings that we see here, but the property, I would like to just discuss the shape of the property itself, is square to the road, which is Gunther Avenue. However, only two sides of the property are at 90 degrees or perpendicular to each other. The remaining portions of this property have all angular lines. So the property presents itself as very wide on Gunther Road, but then has a severe angle running from east to west or west to east on the southerly property line, which then influences the design of the project and the home. In addition, it has an easement that was referred to in previous testimony that runs from east to west for the sewer easement. So what we did was we wanted to create a home that bulked most of its size in the middle of the lot. So the home stretches across Gunther Avenue because...
Excuse me, it's Gunther Avenue.
I keep saying Gunther, I'm sorry, Uncle Gunther. Gunther Avenue, excuse me. And because the property has a severe slope or a severe angle on the right side or the southerly portion, we have to provide for most of the house to be towards the middle of the property, and that, of course, led to a natural solution of providing parking to the southerly portion of the site. Okay, the property has been identified by the borough master plan as a fair share house and its fair share housing settlement agreement as potential sites suited for affordable housing development. That is what we were told, and therefore that is our march towards providing a house that best fits in this area. The lot size, again, is oversized. The minimum lot width is 75 feet required in this zone. We have a lot here that has 166 feet, 6 inches at its narrowest point, and 248 feet at its widest point. So the lot is significantly wider than the minimum widths required for the zone. We have a side yard variance. The engineer will testify to that side yard variance, but primarily it is a result of this sloping or angled lot line that occurs on the right side. The setback, at the setback of this home, the side yards exceed the minimum requirement and exceed the requirements for this design. We have the engineer will testify to coverages. I'm going to concentrate mostly on the building design, and that's where we're going to head right now for this testimony. The building is designed to meet the height requirement. It is done so by making hip roofs so that the eave lines of the roof are less than the 22-foot maximum permitted by the zone. That would be these lines that are shown on the rendering across the facade here, these white lines. That's the eave line, we call it. The hip roofs, which is the design of a roof that slopes from all directions up towards the middle, is usually a lower roof design for this style home, which is in the keeping of a prairie style home, than a gables roof. A gable roof is the peak type of roofs that you see sometimes in homes. In so doing, we keep the ridge line of this home more than 5 feet below the height permitted in the zone. So the house is considerably lower than what is permitted in this zone. The home consists of a group home, the building consists of a group home with 4 bedrooms on the first floor. The home is designed to meet criteria for DDD licensing as well as applicable adaptability standards, and in this case, accessibility standards, as well as adaptability standards for the apartments above that group home. The home's 4 bedrooms are located towards the northern part of the property. This is because there are no residents adjacent to this home to the southerly portion. So what we've done is we've made the lower portion, the 1-story portion of the home, the one that is closest to the northerly side yard, therefore having less impact on neighbors. The 4 bedrooms are sized according to what we use as a standard of 120-ish square feet for each bedroom. Also, the recommended guidelines in the DDD standards. In addition to that, we have 4-foot or 3.5 to 4-foot wide hallways. They are a little different based on their use and the amount of activity we feel is going to be used inside the home. We have 2 bathrooms. Those are required, both 2 bathrooms required by the DDD for licensing. In addition, we have a full kitchen on the first floor in that group home. We have a general living space in the first floor of the group home, which is a dining area, living area, combination area. That is permitted. The DDD requires a second living space in addition to that living space that must be separated in some way from that living space. That is a requirement and provided for in our design with this den that is marked here. And finally, what we have in this building on the first floor, adjacent and connected to that group home, is a community room, as previously testified by Mr. Taranto. That room is used for community activities in which residents both upstairs and in the group home can mingle and mix. It is a place where guardians or family can meet their loved ones and actually participate in activities. There is no basement in this group home. There is less disturbance when you build a home without a basement. There's less excavation, there's less depth to be dug for footings and foundations, and as a result, we have less disturbance on the zone, on the property when we construct. That was something that we gave consideration and thought to when designing the home. In addition, there's no reason to have a basement in a group home. Basements are somewhat limited in their functionality in a group home because a group home is designed for accessibility, and basements aren't very accessible. So we don't really incorporate much of a basement in group homes. There are times when we are forced to do that. This is not one of them because the property only has a gentle slope from front to back, and there's no significant grade change in which we would have to fill this area with occupied space. The home is designed so that it has a porch that wraps from the front yard to the side parking area. That is this element that you see in the elevation to the right. The reason for the porch is the porch creates a sense of scale. The porch creates a sense of a pedestrian scale and also a front. It signifies and identifies a front to the home. That's important because we wanted to put a front door in the front of the house so that, as long as it's not me, it was the front. We just want to provide a front door in the front of the house so that it looks like any other house that would have a front door facing the main road. The second floor apartments then are accessed by that front door and that stair hall that front door leads, and that is the element to the right of our plan, which would be this octagonal element here. This is the stair hall that leads to the two apartments upstairs. One is a two-bedroom apartment, one is a single-bedroom apartment. Each of those apartments have their own living space or own kitchens, cooking area, and full kitchen space and full cooking area, along with a bathroom in each, closets required for each, and mechanical spaces for each. When looking at these areas of the home, I'm going to break them down so we understand where they're applied. The group home is 2,994 square feet. The 2,994 square feet that we've designed this group home must also include, by DDD standards, 10% of its area for storage space. That is required for the residents. Presumably, it's actually written in the DDD standard that it's required for the residents' winter clothing so they have a place to store their clothes for off-season. 10% of the 2,994 square feet is 299 square feet. The closets that are presented or shown in this plan count towards that storage. But in this plan, there is not 299 square feet yet. The board members may ask, well, why isn't there yet? Everybody's going to ask why it's not there yet. There are a few reasons why. The first is we have to, when this is developed further, determine the mechanical systems that go in the building. We also have to determine how much space we need for a sprinkler systems closet. And we also have to determine if we need any additional rooms for gas meters or any additional room for water meters and any additional room for electrical meters. Most of those may go on the outside. We understand that's the case. The last thing we don't know is what kind of mechanical equipment is actually used in the home just yet. Recently, we have found that the decisions for mechanical equipment are sometimes based, believe it or not, on funding sources. So if there is credits being sought for energy efficiency or some kind of program that we have to start thinking about, it may change the proposed systems, for example, from a conventional split system, gas-fired, a furnace and air conditioning system, to a water-sourced heat pump system with a mini-split system in which each room is going to have its own unit. Now, this gets to be a little more involved, and I don't mean to bore the board, but I don't know how much systems or space we need to allocate just yet for those systems, so we provide general space for that kind of potential mechanical system area. Now, when this plan is further developed, if it should be granted approval, we have to incorporate resident storage, which is an additional 200 square feet or 187 square feet from what's shown, plus the mechanical systems that would best serve the residents, the funding source, and then the spaces needed for storage. That is going to incorporate, and there is a sketch that's been developed for this that is dated from April, I believe, of April 4th, thank you, 2024, which is on the screens, and that indicates those red marks, the kind of storage that must be added into the project for the residents for the sake of satisfying the 10% additional 10% total storage space required by the group home. hope that clarifies a little better why this group home is the way it is. Now, minimum hallways have to be 42 inches wide. We must have the kitchen, and it must be a fully functioning kitchen. We must have a living and dining area, and we must have a separate living area. You must have a powder room area that is used by non-residents for bathroom. Residents cannot share bathrooms with non-residents, or vice versa. And you must have the 2 bathrooms. And since this plan was first developed, and since we started this in 2020, New Jersey has adopted the newest handicapped accessibility standards or revisions to those standards. And all of these have actually gotten bigger. The bathrooms are actually increasing in size. So a turning radius is no longer allowed to be 5 foot for a wheelchair. It's 5'7". They've determined that mechanical or battery-operated wheelchairs are slightly bigger, and they need a little more space. And some of these adjustments are being incorporated and have to be incorporated into this plan. The other thing I want to mention is that when you look at DDD standards, and I apologize for the rant ahead of time, they tell you can make a bedroom smaller. The recommended size for the bigger bedroom is 120. Well, yes, you can make a bedroom 70. They said 70 square feet. I don't think that meets the building code, by the way, because I don't think, and I would never put a resident in a 7x8 or 9 bedroom, or I should say 8x9 bedroom. It's just not big enough. Why? The bed, which is a standard twin bed, is contemplated in the standards. A twin bed, is already 23 and a half square feet. The clearance you need to approach a door by the accessibility or by the handicapped accessibility standards is almost 19 square feet. The bed and the clear area you need in front of the door is 43 square feet. If you design a room of 70 square feet, it leaves them 27 square feet of space in the room. Can anybody imagine what it's like to navigate a room that has 2 foot wide, especially if you're disabled, 2 foot wide by 6 feet in one direction and 2 foot wide by 8 feet the other? It's impossible. It's not a navigable room. You won't have the correct access to the closets and the doors for the opening of the doors. So we can't design that room that small. That is not what those intended guidelines are for those. Those are intended for renovated houses and perhaps not quite traditionally designed like a traditional home. So, pet peeves aside, realistically, these are the room sizes we use for other reasons. HUD standards and state and federal standards require bigger rooms than the DDD requires. So we always fall into conflict between some of these things. If there's federal money used for this project, for example, you couldn't design them with the DD standards. You have to increase the sizes. So just keep that in mind when we talk about how small and big this house is. It's less than 3,000 square feet, the home. For a 4-bedroom home that must have all those spaces and provide full accessibility.
Okay, is this a good breaking point for you if I want to?
It is.
Okay, then it is 9:02. We'll take 10 minutes. We'll be back about 9:12. For those of you who are not familiar, if you go outside and around the left, the restrooms are back here. Line up neatly and be back here at 9:12, please.
Disability.
All right, folks, it is 9:12 and 39 seconds. We are back in session. The air conditioning is not exactly, well, maybe they should pay the bill once in a while, but in the meantime, I've taken my jacket off. Please feel free to make yourselves comfortable, remove your jackets, remain decent, of course, but no disrespect whatsoever if you remove your jackets. Ready to go? Mr. Vergara, if you would continue with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just give a few moments of testimony to the outside and the design of the home from the exterior as far as our strategies and materials implemented on the facade. We're proposing that we have a stone base that runs along the bottom of the home, the base of the home. And the reason why we're proposing that is we're creating some horizontal lines to help emphasize the horizontality and not the height of the building so it doesn't look too tall. Again, the house is way below the height limit. The horizontality with the eave lines, which you see my finger pointing to on this rendering here, help create a lower sense of scale. The roof lines, which are hip roofs on the end of the building too, are very low. This element on the end of the building towards the north side of the building is only 1 story high, and the roof above that is perhaps another 5.5 feet high. So this element on this side on the left here is less than maybe 15 feet high. It's not a very tall element. In addition, the octagonal design for the front with the columns helps draw the eye around the home, which is important only because most residents and visitors are going to be parking in the area next to the home, and so we have provided a door that is contained in this notch on the side of the home facing the parking area or the driveway. And the advantage to that, of course, is that both entrances from the front facing Genther and from the driveway area are in close proximity to each other. That's part of the reason that's important for us, just for wayfinding and for residents, but also important is the fact that we needed to create an element from which we can kind of join all of these entrances or these 2 entrances together, and that's why the stair works well in that location. It's also why the entrance to the community room is there, because that foyer is really shared by more than just the residents upstairs. Anybody using the community room must use that space, and therefore any visitors who are going to participate in any of the residents' events must also use that space. The building on the outside with that stone base also has horizontal hardy plank siding, usually pre-finished in one of their 12 or 15 colors. We've designed many homes with those finishes. It's an asphalt shingle roof. It usually has a 30 or 35-year warranty on it with the dimensional shingle, so it has some texture. We designed many homes and projects for Bergen County United Way, Madeline Partners LLC, with these materials to success. All the trim boards are done usually with an ASEC or Boral trim, a PVC type trim, which is very low maintenance and also always looks fresh. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance for painting. It doesn't really peel very much. These are higher end or nicer finishes on the material side. And then we put windows throughout the home on all facades so that there are no dead walls or blank walls. And then when we do that, we try to create some kind of pattern in the windows with simulated divided lights, such as shown on this front elevation, on this rendering on A1, which has a pattern that's sympathetic to the prairie style, again, because of the roof designs, the horizontality, and the historic nature of that type of building design. And that would really conclude my testimony, aside from the fact that the building has a fully, as Mr. Toronto mentioned, it does have a sprinkler system. DDD requires that. So it will be fully sprinklered. We will be rating the building with rated construction, meaning we'll use fire-rated gypsum board inside. The DDD likes to see that. We like to do that for safety reasons. There will be evacuation plans prepared by the sponsor, but for code reasons, so the board's comfortable, they must be able to evacuate the residents within 3 minutes to qualify this as a group home to begin with. So those are really, and the building is designed in such a way to facilitate that. And that would conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
A couple of just questions for you. you're familiar with all the code requirements from all the different and various agencies. All of those code requirements have been incorporated in these plans, correct?
Yes, we will satisfy all those code requirements, yes.
Testify that there may be a need for some modification for a storage area to be bigger or the bathroom to be bigger in the interior of the building. Am I correct in saying that all those modifications could be made and the building will not get any larger than the footprint you're showing now?
The building will not be larger. It's intended to fit within this footprint. It will be fitting within this footprint, the entire design of the home.
And in describing this group home, you've gone through and labeled some of the rooms there beyond the bedrooms. You've talked about a community room. You've talked about the den. Just for a sense of comparing the community room that you're proposing and the family room or great room, whatever you want to call it, in a single-family home, how comparable are they?
They're very comparable to single-family room homes. Bedrooms at 10 by 11 or 11 by 11, 10 are very standard size in single-family homes. The community room size is equivalent of a family room in any home, any single-family home. We've designed hundreds, I can't count, but hundreds of homes, and none of these room sizes are exceptionally large would be considered exceptionally large for any of those homes.
You've designed homes, single-family homes, that have a footprint similar to this.
Yes, most single-family homes we've designed are the minimum of this size, and then are larger, really.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. All right. Dave, do you have any questions?
Sure. I guess a couple questions I have. So I know it's not necessarily yours, the site plan, but I know there's a number of HVAC units and stuff shown, and I think I heard during your testimony that still really hasn't been defined as far as what's going in, not going in, as far as that stuff.
We will always, for air conditioning, there will always be some kind of condensing unit outside. Whether or not it's also a mini split exchanger, heat exchanger, condensing unit, it's different. It will still be there. There will still be a unit there. However, how it's ducted inside and what kind of system equipment I need inside the home is affected more by that decision than outside.
Okay, but so the equipment shown outside is
It will be
pretty
there.
consistent with
Yes.
what you would expect to see when you're all done. And I know there's a generator that's shown on the plan. Is that a requirement from DDD or?
It's actually not a requirement. The DDD does not require generators for this kind of project size or this kind of project type.
Okay. I guess can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the reasoning behind it?
The generator?
Yes.
So, to clarify, no, it's not required. For the building type, I mean, we've designed 15 projects with the group, and most of them have generators. And the reason why is the following. They want all security systems to operate, even during storms or when there's a power failure. They would like to sometimes have medications that have to be refrigerated. They need a refrigerator to work, usually, for the purpose of having power during storms or outages. And therefore, the residents, for this population or this resident, the generator brings a set of comfort level to them, and also to the parents and guardians of that resident. So it's kind of requested by the families. So that's why it's there.
Fair enough.
Promote safety.
Well, it does, yes. It does.
Understood. And then I think if I heard correct, so
I should also clarify, if the home has no power in a storm, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but DDD would require that they all evacuate and leave. I don't think you're permitted to stay in the home. And that's another reason why it's fairly important for them to have the generator. I mean, actually, you should clarify, but that is the case. Yeah.
Okay. And then if I saw correctly, so the community room that's on there, it's part of the structure itself as a whole. So from the exterior, it looks like it's part of it. But as far as access to it, is it direct access from the group home portion?
There is no direct access from either the independent living units upstairs, the apartments, or the group home.
Okay. And is that like, how do you gain access to that community room
The
itself?
community room is entered actually through what I call the stair hall, which is the entryway that is accessed from either the front door or the rear entry porch. And that stairway serves as a path or egress path to the apartments upstairs, but they have their own doors. So it is it's almost attached to the apartment portion of the project, even though it's separate from.
Now, do you need, I don't know if it was your testimony or Mr. Toronto's, you need a key card or you have access into it. Is that how you gain your access to that portion?
That was Mr. Toronto's testimony, but it is a secure type of fob access.
Okay. That's fine. I think those are the main questions. And then, obviously, the site is fully ADA accessible as far as the design and layout of your building.
Parking, walks, building egress paths, building rooms, interior rooms, bathrooms, kitchens. Yes.
Okay. Now, as far as the independent living portion, I mean, obviously it's on the second floor. Does that make that ADA accessible, or can you talk about that?
ADA accessibility does not apply to apartment units. It's ADA adaptability, so it's a little different. And then in a building with 3 or less units, in this case a home and 2 apartments, you're not required to make the second floor accessible.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions, Chairman.
Caroline, do you have any questions?
Just a couple, thank you. Where is the trash area going to be?
That is on the site plan.
That's on the site
engineer is
plan?
going to testify to it.
Okay.
It is, the trash area is going to be located near the den
Okay,
on the side of the parking area.
okay,
That's where it's going to, you'll see it in the site plan, the engineering site plan. It's not on our architectural plan.
right, that's why I asked. Okay, so we'll wait for the engineer for that. And then basically, am I just, for a general overview of some of your testimony, am I understanding things properly in that this home with the footprint and the coverages, it is the size and the layout that it is based on the residents that are anticipated and the requirements of various groups and the regulations of various groups and state and federal agencies, both for licensing and for funding purposes, that you had, you designed this building with very specific parameters because that's the way that it has to be in order for this type of, in order for it to have the group home with the independent living upstairs and get all the licensing that you need and the potential funding sources. Is that, am I understanding your testimony in that manner?
Yes, along with the ability to, along with certain design considerations in presenting a front door to the street, along with creating or adding or incorporating, I should say, a stair and a community room within the entire design of the structure, so it doesn't look like a separate portion, that it looks like one home.
I
So
understand.
those goals too contribute to this, because, you know, you have to allocate the space to create these things, or you at least have to create these objects that work and fit together. And finally, we haven't really discussed it because it's a little into a rabbit hole, but, you know, there's a structural line that runs through the home, and it's a wood structure, so walls have to line up for this to stand up, and so there are also those considerations as well. So we take into account the resident, the restrictions, the guidelines, the criteria for adaptability and accessibility, the site, the layout of the site and parking, the access to the site from the sidewalk, or to the structure and the building from the sidewalk, the separation of the residents so that they can live as a community but also have their own separate space for just practical reasons and functional reasons and things of like those nature, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's a lot of different categories.
It's just, that's the way things are done, designed that way.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, Bob, do you have any
No
questions?
questions.
Steve?
Yes, do you have a fire department connection on the building?
There will be a Siamese connection on the building.
Okay. And that'll come through with their construction plans?
It's going, as you, well, you may or may not, but it will be always, usually always on the front of the building. We have Also, the driveway side, I don't know if they're going to require, I'm expecting it to be on the front like almost every other building that I've done in 30-something years, so it's going to end up being in that closet area that we show on our plan, which says meter room.
Okay, well, the Oradell Fire Department approves that
They will
location.
review the entire plan and then tell us
that.
where they, prefer to have it.
The second item is your second means of egress. I see it in the back and goes to a patio. It needs to go to a public way. Are you proposing a further design going to the parking lot to the public way, or?
Technically, it needs to go to an area of refuge or a public way. The patio would actually suffice as an area of refuge in this design, so we connected it to the patio. There is the opportunity for us to connect the patio to the front with a little walkway. We can do that if that's something that the fire department wishes to have, but, we just haven't drawn or established those parameters with the fire department yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, do you have any questions?
So I have a question, but I'm wondering if it's appropriate now or for the engineer. Questions
Well,
around the variances?
Ask the question and I'll tell you
Okay,
if
sure.
it's out of...
So the variances that are being sought right now, maybe first the floor area ratio variance. So this is, if I understand, it's about a 6,000 square foot home on a half-acre lot. So that's above the variance. What was the consideration around bringing it into compliance, and what would that do to the structure, and are there reasons why that's not being considered?
There's the Please check your phones. Please.
Anybody checking?
No, didn't see anybody check their phones.
The primary, the catch here is that as a property, let me rephrase. The catch is that if this property were subdivided with conforming lots, which it could be into multiple conforming lots, for example, the area that could be built would be greater than what you're seeing here in total.
The FAR.
The FAR, I should say. So the floor area ratio for this size property is actually not overly aggressive, considering it could be a multiple set of structures that exceed this area. That is the way the ordinance is written.
7,500 square foot lots.
Correct. We could do multiple 7,500 square foot lots. We could do two of them, for example, and then each of those homes would actually together exceed the area of this home. So when we design the home, we design the home based on all the criteria established that I've testified to previous. We didn't design the home around the FAR ratio. And part of the reason is because the lot is so large.
We're going to address that further with our planner.
So,
We'll have that.
okay, all
testified.
right. And then also related question, the floor area ratio and that calculation, that doesn't include the parking lot,
No,
right?
No.
So,
Only a structure.
right,
no.
okay,
And coverage would be testified to by the engineer.
okay. And the side lot variance as well?
The side yard I mentioned, but the engineer will go into greater detail, and
Okay.
that is because of that angled property line that we have that side yard variance.
Okay. But back to the FAR, I mean, you're not currently requesting that the site be subdivided and
No.
separate properties built on. So in this scenario, is there an option to bring it either into compliance or closer to compliance?
Not with this option, no.
Why is that?
There would not be enough space to build the two apartments and the group home with the community room. It just wouldn't fit.
And it's just not a consideration to build a smaller home?
So the guidelines require us to build this, and the agreement we have with the Borough of Oradell for the 14 credits require us to build a home, a group home of this.
Right, so if, that was my assumption, but just so that in order to get the credits, you'd have to build something of this size with this number of residents.
Your planner has asked that million-dollar question, and that is, what prompted the size of this building? And it was all of those things that our witness testified to, all the criteria.
Oh, I'm going to have the engineer testify. I'm going to, but we were going to have the engineer testify. I'm not doing anything. Sorry, habit. But Your floor area ratio is a sliding scale, and it's 35% for the smaller lots, and then it reduces to 17 or 17.5% for 15,000 square foot lot. It doesn't contemplate lots bigger than 15,000 square feet, actually. So we are in a unique circumstance where our lot is larger than the largest lot contemplated in the zone, I think. And that's something you're going to hear from the engineer, but I just wanted to clarify that, you understand the numbers that we're dealing with here, because we're way under what that would be.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the board? Yeah.
I have one question. Do the plans have to be submitted for approval either for funding purposes or to any other state agency? And if so, I'm not so much the inside, but from the exterior standpoint, can they make any modifications at that point in time?
Maybe it's maybe it's just luck. I have not had to make any changes. They are presented to the state for funding, and they are presented for review, design review, and that's from the state architect in the Human Services Division. So yes, they will make certain comments. Those comments usually pertain to things like energy efficiency and construction specifications, so that we're meeting their latest and greatest initiatives. Okay.
But they will not consider a review until they know they have a local approval.
Right.
But they approve the plans?
They will definitely have to approve the design, yes. And you may not know, but they've already had to approve your site. They've already sent an architect here to look at the site, to even qualify us to be here, and to even become a real project. The first thing they do is visit the site, and they look at things like mass transit availability and proximity, shopping, walk to work, things like that, because the residents who live upstairs may actually have jobs and work in local establishments, things like that. So the site meets the criteria. Then they wait for the building design to be approved or denied, right, here, and then take that, if approved, and review that for the design.
And what specific agency are you referring to in terms of the approval?
It's the DDD and Health and Human Services. I forgot which one. It gets complicated. For example, the DDD guidelines is in the Department of Health and Human Services, where you seek those guidelines for design.
And so that everyone in the room is clear, could you please just spell out DDD, not spell out, but give the full name of DDD, please?
The Department of Developmental Disabilities.
Thank you.
And then Tan,
Yes, if I may.
If you could have a microphone, please.
The New Jersey State Housing Mortgage Finance Agency will review the architectural plans submitted by James, but once they've been approved by the borough, aside from, as James points out, making some suggestions around making the building greener, so to speak, they're not going to change the envelope, the basic design, the floor plans, et cetera. So you have to think of the New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency.
But that's later, Tom, after the board.
after if we are
The
approved.
first step is the approval of the site, which Mr. Vagona testified to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay. We'll begin again with council, and once again, questions are only, first, questions, and second, relevance to the testimony you've just heard and the subject matter of the testimony. Council, again, still, you identify yourself, though.
Hello, I'm Amanda Kronmeyer from Herald Law. I'm
You needn't mention their names again.
So I'm representing Nancy Kostopoulos, Leslie and Peter Johnson, Akiyoshi and Akakiko Akakehi, and Monica Sespek and Jarek Kurak.
Okay, and for the future, you needn't mention their names again when you come up.
Oh, I don't?
Need not.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Misheard that. All right. So, bear with me a moment. Mr. Vergona, when were you first retained for this application?
We began
I'm going
the
to object. somewhat, it's irrelevant.
Now, it's cross-examination.
Yeah, let
What
it go.
difference does it make?
If you recall, James.
I recall, I can't say exactly when, but I know the project began sometime pre-COVID 2020, I want to say.
And you haven't submitted a report to the board, right?
Report?
Yeah, some sort of architectural report or some sort of document about the DDA regulation, something along those
Exhibits
lines.
are all listed.
Testified that in his experience, he's complying with the DDD requirements. Does not require to submit a report.
Understood. And you reviewed the ordinance?
I looked at the ordinance, yes.
And you reviewed the application materials and plans submitted for this application in addition to your architectural plans, correct? Like the site plan.
I've seen the site plan, yes.
And you prepared the architectural plans dated October 10th, 2023, right?
I don't recall the dates unless I look at them. So
Again, please remember the microphone.
I did prepare the plans from October 10th, 2023,
And the revised sheet, as you stated.
including revisions, yes.
Thank you. And you believe that the plans and the application materials are accurate and complete as to the relief required as a part of this application, right?
Yes.
And when you design a building such as this, you attempt to make it compliant with the zoning regulations, right?
Yes.
And you try to make the height or elevations, the setbacks, the materials, the overall size, shape, similar to that of surrounding residences, right?
No.
So you don't look to create a design that's in line with the
He asked and
surrounding.
answered it.
Okay. And the proposed building layout is not similar to that of surrounding residential buildings,
I
correct?
do not know the layouts of the surrounding residential buildings.
Are you? It doesn't have the same style or material as the surrounding neighborhood, correct?
There's been no
surrounding neighborhood?
testimony as to what the design is of surrounding residences that I've heard.
Yeah.
All right. So as an architect, there are conditions that you would recommend for this application to minimize the proposed development's potential impact on the surrounding neighborhood, right?
Could you repeat that one more time?
So as an architect, there are conditions that you would recommend for this application to minimize the proposed development's potential impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
Objection is first has to be supposition that there's an impact. Next question.
All right. You haven't prepared any construction materials for review, right? Like an exhibit that
For review by who?
for this board, for the public?
Well, I object. The board doesn't require construction drawings. Construction drawings are submitted to a building department only if a land use board approves the site plan in the first place.
We're really talking about Mr. Vagona's exhibits. I think it's A7 and A3 on Mr. Whitaker's list. I don't think there's anything else from the architect. I'm sorry, A8 also.
Okay.
A7, 3, 7, and 8.
And the HVAC units, you testified that there will be HVAC units on the outside of the house, correct?
There will be some form of condensing units on the outside of the house, yes.
But you don't know what that form is currently?
I don't know if they are going to be part of what they call a split system type or a mini split system type.
So that would necessarily indicate the number of them? So
It could or could not, and it could indicate the size of them or not.
okay. And you testified to a generator being proposed, correct?
Yes.
Is there any sort of screening of that generator?
Yeah, the
proposed?
engineer will testify about the generator's placement on the site and its surrounding screening.
And forgive me for you didn't testify to any lighting, correct? Your architectural plans don't depict.
No, they don't.
Okay. And what's the capacity for this building?
And I don't know the capacity, that's a general term, capacity of what?
I guess I'll rephrase the occupancy limit for this building.
I haven't calculated the limit of occupancy, but I could tell you that it's going to house seven full-time residents.
Okay, thank
And
you.
it's designed to house 7 full-time residents plus any staff that need to be there.
And when you say plus any staff, that's not in terms of overnight or.
There is overnight staff that must be there.
Yes, but
I'm talking, and they're not residents.
that's what I meant to get to. So
I
thank
just
you.
want to be clear.
Yeah, Mr. Toronto testified to that already.
Okay. And you testified that the FAR of 5930 square feet, that's warranted due to the New Jersey State Code requirements for a group home, correct?
No, I didn't say that. I said that the group home conforms with the state requirements from the Department of Developmental Disabilities. It conforms with the accessibility requirements and adaptability requirements from federal ADA standards, including also ANSI standards, ANSI. And it will conform with all building codes. So, and funding sources, excuse me. Yep.
Understood. And when you say will conform with funding sources, that those.
Will conform with building codes, and the design does conform with the funding sources at this time, with those elements in the plan that have been designed to date. Not everything is finished yet because we have not submitted any construction drawing.
All right. And could you point to the specific DDD regulation that requires the community spaces that you testified to?
That is referred to in the department, it's the nj.gov/human services website, and there is a list of requirements, two-page list of requirements there and recommendations there.
And that requires the size as proposed, this den and the community room on your plans?
Doesn't specify living space sizes, it specifies bedrooms, bathrooms, quantities, hallway widths, storage space, and there are other factors there. I don't recall it being very specific about living sizes per se.
But your testimony was that 2 were required per the regulations. And
You must have 2.
You must have 2.
And you must have an office. I didn't talk about that, but you must have an office for staff as well. And it must have a lockable closet for medications, and it goes on and on, but yes.
And so you, in answering before, you didn't compare the square footage of this building to those in the neighborhood, correct?
Objection asked and answered, and not relevant.
Move on. I said move on.
Yes, thank you. And so I'll just go back to the point about the required size of the community rooms. No, actually, sorry, no, withdrawn. Yeah. I think I have.
Okay, thank you. All right. Does any member of the public have any questions? Please raise your hand. Mr. Latunis, come up. Please state your name and address.
Oh, it's 50 Beverly Road. There is a cemetery adjacent to this property. How much of a space are you allowing for people to?
Objection not testified to as far as the site plan aspects.
Does your site encroach on that property?
Does our site encroach? No, our site is the property that we have within the property lines.
Does your property line encroach? What is a border? What is your property? What does your property border to the north of your property?
This is beyond a direct testimony. There was no testimony about that.
Well, the cemetery is there. That's why I'm asking.
Testimony about
Testimony about that. Remember, you're supposed to be asking questions of this witness about his testimony at this point. He made.
I thought we're talking about the site.
The testimony was about the building.
Oh, only about the building.
This is an architect.
So we're not going to talk about the site now, or we're going to talk about
That's
it
right.
later?
We're not going to talk about the site right now.
Okay. All right, could you put up the plan again, up there, please?
First floor?
Yeah, first floor.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I need, come bring it down a little bit.
Yes, sir.
That's it. All right, perfect. Right there.
Thank you.
These are the areas that the people are going to be residents there, right? What if that hallway is blocked there? How are they going to
Into the
get
mic,
out?
into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. How will the residents leave if there should be a fire in that hallway? I don't not see another exit or entrance on this side here. If there's a fire up
Into
there,
the microphone.
well, you know what? Take the microphone with me.
Please don't break
No,
it.
don't.
Please don't break it.
All right, now,
Don't scream into it.
I'm trying to show you that area there where the hall is. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. What if that is blocked? How are these residents going to get out of here if there's a fire?
We will stipulate, and already have, that the plans that are being submitted to the building department will be reviewed by the fire department and will meet all code requirements.
Well, I hope they bring that up. Thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public with a question? Not seeing a show of hands? Close the meeting to the public.
Someone over there.
Oh, was there a hand raised? I
Thought I
didn't.
saw one. All right.
No, there's no hand raised. Okay. Close the meeting to the public, sir.
Call David Halls, our next witness, our final witness.
Did you say final? Is that final witness for tonight or for the case?
Hopefully, we could get through it. It's engineering and planning.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Mr. Halls, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this proceeding shall be true, so help you God? And for the record, will you state your full name and spell your last name, please?
David Halls, H-A-L-S. Address is 111 Littleton Road, Suite 200, Parsippany, New Jersey.
Chairman, Mr. Halls has been previously qualified as a civil engineer and planner before other boards and tallies that I represent. I recommend he be so qualified without the need for any additional testimony.
We do accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hall, correct to say that you've not only been to the site, but you prepared the plans that have been submitted as exhibits with this application?
That's correct.
And you've worked with Bergen County United Way, Madeline housing in the past and development various sites that Mr. Toronto has testified to.
That is correct.
And the plans that you've prepared are synthesized with the architectural plans, is that correct?
Yes.
So with that said, what I'd like you to do is take us through what the existing conditions are and what's being proposed from an engineering perspective.
All right, what I have mounted on the board is a colorized version of the site plan. This is the site plan that's entitled Block 223, Lot 5, Genther Avenue for BCUW Madeline Housing Partners. It has a date of September 14th, 2023, last revised March 28th, 2024.
I think that's 810 on Mr. Whitaker's list.
Correct.
The plan has been a little bit changed. I've incorporated the landscaping along with the site plan so you can, and I've colorized the plan specifically to show the site and the proposed improvements. The existing.
Excuse me, was this submitted to the
No, this is a synthesis of the three, so we can mark this as an exhibit 8, we're up to 814, colorized version of what's already been submitted.
Can a PDF be sent to the,
Yes,
thank you.
I think it would be 814.
814.
Just for orientation purposes, Genther Avenue is located in the bottom of the plan. It's running from left to right. We're at the southerly end of Genther Avenue. North is to the left, south is to the right. We're right at the intersection of Genther Avenue and Brookside Avenue. The property is very irregular shaped. This is actually a compilation. The municipality acquired this parcel in multiple phases. They acquired it, I believe, in 3 or 4 different subdivisions on the property. The lot area is 19,943 square feet, or 0.45 acres. The property has a frontage of 248.56 feet along Genther Avenue. Presently, the property is vacant. It's a wooded piece of property. From the street to the back of the property, it drops approximately 8 feet in elevation. Elevation-wise, the front street line's at elevation 33, the rear's at elevation 25. And average from the front to the back, it drops in approximately a slope of approximately 10%. The southerly portion of the lot has 3 easements along the property. Right along the right-hand side or southerly property line is the sanitary sewer easement. Then next to the sanitary sewer easement is a storm drainage easement. And then slightly diagonally, I'll call it, coming on the plan that I've got there, coming in by the parking area going towards from the west to the east is a water main across the property itself. If you go to the property, a portion of the property is fenced in. One of the property owners, I believe it's Garden Place, can't remember. They're utilize a portion of this lot, and it's within their fenced lawn area, but it's actually part of this piece of property itself. On the most northerly side of the property, there is presently there's a sign that was erected talking about a cemetery on the property. It's actually not on this piece of property. It's the property to the rear with another portion that's owned by the borough. And there's an access way along the northerly property line to the rear municipal lot. Surrounding properties to this are all residential houses on Genther, Brookside Avenue, and Garden Place, and the property is located in the R4 residential district. What I have for the proposal, we've already seen the architectural plans. The house is colored in an orange color on the site plan. This is the proposed dwelling as it sits on the lot itself. And you can see with the irregular shape of the piece of property, the way the architectural layout of the house was designed. There's a sawtooth in the back following along the properties itself. and the property is, and the building itself is located more towards the center of the property. The house, it's a residential house that's proposed. It's a four-bedroom group home on the first floor and two independent residential units on the second floor, one being one-bedroom unit, the second being a two-bedroom. This is all for supportive housing, special needs housing. And then on the southerly side of the house, we're proposing a parking area. This is the parking area for the residents of the home and the service providers to the home. We're proposing 8 parking spaces, one of which is an ADA parking space. In accordance with the residential site improvement standards, 7 parking spaces are required and 8 parking spaces are proposed. We have a rear patio area, and then we have a walkway that's along the edge of the parking area and also leads into the house both in the front yard of the home along, we extend out towards the street itself, and then it's colored in like a yellowish color on the site plan. That extends along the driveway to the dumpster, which is located in the southeast corner of the home itself. I shouldn't call it a dumpster. I just, that was a, strike that from the record.
Trash enclosure.
It's a trash area. It's for cans. It's going to be enclosed in a 4-foot fence around the perimeter, and there'll be cans in the area itself. This is a residential home, the same fashion as any other residential home, and there'll only be cans in the within the trash enclosure. Grading-wise, what we've done with the site, as I mentioned, the property drops from the street towards the back of the property. This is a barrier-free design, meaning that there are no steps involved. From the parking area into the building, there'll be very gentle sloped sidewalks from the parking area into the home itself. There will be no steps. There won't be any large elevation change. So because of that, we've designed this in a fashion where we had to raise the grade, and the home from Genther Avenue to the front of the house will be a fairly level grade from the street to the home, and the parking area itself will rise up slightly at the street, then continue to fall towards the rear of the property in a very gentle slope. We are filling the back of the property because the patio area behind the home is at the same first level as the first floor of the home. And then we are supporting that patio in the rear yard of the home with 2 retaining walls along the back side of the home and 1 retaining wall that runs along the easterly property line and then continues in a southerly direction along the southerly property line. That retaining wall is approximately 4 feet high, and that retaining wall is needed to support the parking area and also the grading of the area around the site. What we've done is, with the retaining walls, we're trying to limit the retaining walls to a maximum of 4 feet high. The back retaining wall is 2 tiers, and we've landscaped between the 2 tiers to soften the impact on the adjoining properties, the visual impact from that retaining wall with any of the adjoining homes. We've also added additional landscaping and street trees along the frontage of Ganther Avenue. And the plan that's on the television shows the larger open circles in the front. Those are shade trees, and then the darker trees, and I guess I got to call them, I don't know how you describe it. But anyway, the darker circles, those are evergreen trees. And what we try to do is buffer the home itself with any of the adjoining property owners. We've tried to buffer to the property to the north, and also, which I didn't say, but we are maintaining a 15-foot wide walkway to the cemetery in the back. And the way we've designed the landscaping is to provide an open area that would continue in the same fashion it is today. It's a lawn area along that property line. That lawn area or open area would continue, and we've separated it out between our proposed home and the walkway with adding landscaping in between in an attempt to separate out that area from the adjoining properties, and also to landscape the area with the buffering with the adjoining property to the north. Behind the home, we have landscaping between the retaining walls that I mentioned before. There are evergreen plantings that are in between the wall in an attempt to soften the effects of the retaining walls, and also to buffer the rear patio area from the adjoining properties. We do have storm drainage improvements we're doing with the property. The parking lot, as I mentioned before, is draining towards the back. The drainage is the stormwater runoff in the parking area is going to be collected in a storm inlet in the corner of the parking area, and that is going to be piped towards seepage pits towards the front of the property. All of this work is outside the existing drainage easements and water main easements that are on the property. And then in the left rear corner of the property, adjoining the municipal property, we have additional seepage pits that are designed specifically to take the drainage from the roof runoff from the entire home itself. We are not a major development in that the property is not, there's two criteria for a major development in terms of stormwater runoff. One is if you're disturbing more than an acre of property, and this property, as I mentioned before, is 19,000 square feet. An acre is 43,560. So we are about half or more than half smaller than an acre. So we're don't meet the criteria in that sense. The other one is if you're disturbing or creating, I didn't use the right word, if you're creating a quarter acre of new impervious coverage, which is approximately 10,400 square feet. So we do not meet that criteria either. So this is not a major development. So we don't have to meet the municipal stormwater ordinance or the state requirements for a major development, but we are providing the drainage improvements so that we've captured the runoff from both the roof runoff and the parking lot runoff and the runoff from the yard grading. And we are capturing that and storing that on site with the seepage pits, and that's designed for the 100-year storm.
You've prepared drainage calculations that have been submitted with part of this application, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the testimony that you're providing is based upon the work that you've done and the plans that you've prepared for the drainage itself, correct?
Yes.
And it meets all of the standards and requirements?
It does.
You're familiar with those standards and requirements. In fact, you serve as a borough engineer in a number of municipalities, correct?
Yes.
And on the basis of that, there will be no adverse impact from a drainage perspective based upon what's being proposed?
No, we meet all current designs, and there'll be a reduction in the runoff from the site itself.
While you've talked about it, and just interrupt, we know there's a series of easements on this property. Is it correct to say that based on the development that's being proposed here, none of those easements will be disturbed?
Well, we are doing work within the easements. We are parking over the top of the water main and the sewer easement and the drainage easement, but none of the easements have restrictions from us doing so. And then same thing, we are putting retaining walls within the easement. We are proposing to raise existing buried manholes and bringing those to grade so they can be properly maintained that are on the site. We are doing some other improvements to the existing utilities across the site, but in all cases, the utility companies and the municipality will be able to continue to maintain the sewer and the storm drainage and the water main across the property, and there's nothing that will impede that with the water design.
So with all these easements that exist, there'll still be accessibility?
That's correct.
Please proceed.
The landscaping, as I mentioned before, There's 34 existing trees on site. We're proposing to remove 23. The borough does have a tree removal ordinance or replacement ordinance. I'm not quite sure how to word it. But the tree ordinance, with going through there, we're proposing to remove trees that are 12 trees that are between 8 inches and 17 inches in size. That requires a replacement of 13 trees. We're removing 7 trees that are 17 to 31 inches, and that requires 16 replacement trees. And then we're also removing 2 trees that are greater than 31 inches, and that comes out to 6 trees. We're removing, that didn't add up right. I'm adding my numbers in here, and whatever I just tested to did not add up to 23.
Yeah, I'm going to need those numbers again.
Anybody catch that? Or
No.
I got 34 existing trees on site, 23 to be removed. After that, I lost it.
Yeah, well, I'm going down my number, and I'm totaling it up in my head. When I got here, I got 21. But I know the number's 23. So then we're moving 23 trees and require 35 replacement trees. And we're proposing 18 on site. The remaining will have to be compensated through the replacement fee section of the ordinance. With the parking lot, we are proposing lighting. This is a residential parking lot. The site plan ordinance in the borough refers mostly towards lighting of a commercial lot. And I didn't feel that was appropriate for a residential area. So I did not follow the lighting guidelines of the site plan ordinance because it does not talk about residential properties. It's only talking about the lighting of a parking lot for a commercial use. And this would be significant if we lit this in accordance with the ordinance. So it would have a significant impact, in my opinion, on the surrounding properties. So what I've done is propose 2 bollard lights only. These are 2 ground-mounted lights. They are 42 inches tall, and they are to light the walkway itself along the front of the parking area or the northerly side of the parking area. And this would be more appropriate with the residential setting. We all have homes, hopefully we have homes that your driveways at home generally aren't lit to the same level as a parking lot in a commercial zone. They might be dimly lit or not lit at all. This is my proposal is to light this in a fashion that would be consistent with the residential character of the parking spaces themselves. You've heard testimony from Mr. Toronto that there is staff there at the site overnight. They arrive generally at dusk or during the dark periods, but they can find their time away from the parking lot to the site itself. There'll be plenty of parking spaces for them. Because most of the parking is actually generated during the daylight hours. It's not generated during the overnight hours. And so that the parking spaces and the lighting I propose, I believe, is more appropriate for the residential character of the area. The 2 lights, as I mentioned, are only 42 inches tall. They are downcast, and they will provide lighting in just the area of the walkways. There is also lighting that is not shown on the site plan, which is required by the building code. That requires lights to be put over the doorway and that's the same as your own homes, everybody's residential house. The code requires a light at the doorway itself, and so that there will be one at the 2 doorways that Mr. Vagrone spoke about at the porch. Then there'll be another one at the back by the patio or the exit door from the complex itself. But those will all be typical residential style fixtures and what you would find in a residential setting. As I mentioned before about the trash, it's an enclosure for the cans. We are proposing a soil movement for this application. We have a total movement on the site of 921 cubic yards. What this means, relatively speaking, we are going to be cutting and grading the site. That's going to generate 292 cubic yards. We'll be filling in the site for 629 cubic yards, and that, if you take the 921 minus the 292, that's the 629, we will be importing 337 cubic yards. What that translates out to is approximately 25 truckloads will be brought into the site. So it's not a lot of soil, but it is soil that's being brought to the site.
You're familiar with all of the soil movement ordinance in the borough of Oradell, correct?
Yes.
Will this plan that you're submitting comply with all of those requirements?
Yes.
It'll maintain all the soil erosion control elements that are set forth in the ordinances in the borough as well as with the Bergen County Soil Conservation District.
That's correct.
You've had the benefit of the report, the Neglia report, that is dated February 16th, 2024,
Yes.
and you have sent a revised plan and have directed an answer to the issues that were raised, correct?
We tried to address as many of the answers as we could with the revised plan that we submitted. That's correct.
Is there anything in the report that's been submitted to you that you cannot address or do or revise on the from the Neglia report?
I'll quickly address several things.
I think we ought to mark that if you're referring to it to be a board exhibit.
Board A.
Yeah, Board 1.
There was a EV parking space request. This is actually does not require electric vehicle parking. You would require it if this is a multifamily of 5 units or greater, and this is actually only 3 units, so electric vehicle parking is not required. In terms of adequate site distances, we do have the adequate site distance out of the driveway. We can see to approximately 115 feet in a southwesterly direction towards Brookside Avenue from the driveway, and also from Brookside Avenue to the driveway. It's approximately 115 feet. That is an intersection which I estimate, while it's 25 miles an hour speed limit, you probably can only do about 20 miles per hour, and that would meet the sight distance requirement through that intersection. On the other direction, you could look to the north in Genther Avenue. We exceed 200 feet, and that would exceed a 30 mile per hour speed limit. So there's adequate sight distance for the driveway location on the site. Trying to think of something else here. We are proposing one sign, I believe, and that's just going to be the sign for the house number on the building. I don't believe that there's going to be any other sign that's going to be on.
It'll just be a numerical number to identify.
That's correct. In terms of other improvements around the site, we do have a generator that's located in the left rear corner of the house. It's a generator pad at this point in time. I put them on all the site plans we have for the BCUW, and then they, at some point in time, they add the generator later on, but I wanted a place to put the generator on the site. And then we have 6 AC units shown, 3 on the northerly end of the home, and then 3 on the rear of the home. All the locations are in conformance with the zoning ordinance requirements for their placement.
And all of the AC as well as the generator will meet all New Jersey state mandated decibel requirements, correct?
Yes, the generator is going to be encased in a housing unit also, which also deadens the sound. And so they'll all meet the sound requirements.
And the generator and those AC units will be properly buffered with landscaping when put in.
They have landscaping. It's not going to be immediately adjacent to them. The landscaping is further away. The way we've attempted to design the landscaping is to buffer not only the AC units, but also buffer the home itself and soften the view of the whole entire property.
Anything else? Before we get to variances.
I don't think so.
Okay. We've made a request for a series of variances. I'd like you to walk us through
Mr. Chairman,
those.
can I make a recommendation, and feel free to disregard it? We've heard quite a bit of engineering testimony. while that is fresh in everyone's minds, I'm wondering if we could
Great
open
idea.
that to questions from professionals, board, public.
Okay, yes.
And then go to planning after that if we have
Okay,
time.
good. Actually, one thing that struck me, perhaps I misunderstood, in answer to a question, you said there was less than 10,000 square foot of impervious coverage. Did I understand that?
Yeah,
We were told there were two,
A quarter acre, yeah.
but the answer to a question was there was less than 10,000 square foot of impervious coverage.
That's correct.
I was just curious, when I look at the size of the house or the residence, the patio, the walkways, and the parking lot, I was curious, what is the square footage when you add all of that together?
I'll give it to you in a second. You look at the board that I have colored in
Yes.
green. Visually, it looks like it's more impervious coverage. Then it would be the greater number on it. And the reason is the colors I chose, believe it or not. I chose an orange to highlight the building. That stands out the most. And then the parking area to the south, because I have Genther Avenue colored in gray, the parking lot's colored in gray.
Well, what material are you using for the parking lot?
What's that?
What material are you using for the parking lot?
Oh, it's going to be impervious, but I'm going to just give you
Okay,
the numbers.
all right, thank you.
I'm just talking about visually, because I look at this, and if I had to tell you, I would say that the impervious coverage is more than half, right?
That was my impression, yes.
Yes, and I'm explaining why. This is a. Now my brain's fried. I can't think what I'm thinking. This is a optical illusion. Thank you.
You got the same color on the roadway.
Yes, and
Not
so
the
everything looks more. So the building itself is the building coverage is at 20% of the lot. The impervious coverage that we have on the site, the whole total impervious coverage, that is the building, the walkways, the driveway, the AC units, the generator. That is all 42.4%. If I looked at the site, I'd say it's more than 50%, but
Including the parking lot.
So that's
that's
percentages.
including the parking lot, absolutely.
And besides looking at percentages, you've actually done a calculation based upon square footage.
It's 8,460 square feet,
All
On a lot size of,
19,943 square feet.
okay. Thank you.
And I'll just tell you right now, the ordinance permits up to 40%. One of the variances we're asking for is coverage.
Okay.
Impervious coverage.
impervious coverage.
Generally, I wait until the end, but that was just sticking in my craw. I had to ask. I apologize, sir.
Sure. While we're talking about the impervious coverage, I guess just a point of clarification. I think in your testimony, the quarter acre of new impervious coverage, is that impervious coverage per definition of how it is in the code, or is that motor vehicle?
It's actually both. It's quarter acre of motor vehicle surface area or a quarter acre of impervious area.
All right. So as far as the site itself, so I guess tree removal, can you just provide a little clarity on that and what the plan is? So you're removing 23 trees. I think one of our comments was regarding like a demolition plan. I think it would be helpful to have a tree removal plan just specifically so we know which trees.
Well, it's actually on the site plan. It's on,
I think just by itself.
the actual trees themselves are shown on the survey, which is on sheet 6 of 6. And then on the landscape plan, landscape and lighting plan, we have the trees X'd out on the plans, which ones are coming out.
Yeah, no, I see that. I guess, should the board look favorable, a condition potential would be submitting a tree removal plan, so it's just showing the trees only.
No objection to that.
So, as far as the replacement, if I heard correct, you're proposing a total, how many to be replaced?
I think it's 18. 18, I believe I said.
And that's what my notes reflect.
It's in our report,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, you said 18.
18, short 17.
And then, I guess, is there any way, I guess the shortage of 17, just looking at the site, is there any way to add any additional trees within the property that would not impact things there?
Well, the problem we have is on the right-hand side of the property. We have, outside the limits of our parking area, we can't add trees in those locations because of the sewer easements. The sewer, the water, and the storm drain. We're not permitted to plant trees over those utilities. And on the left-hand side of the most northerly portion, we're providing access to the cemetery in the back. So while we'd like to add more trees in that area, then you wouldn't have access to the back cemetery.
Okay. So in your opinion, you've provided, as you maximize the number of trees that you possibly could on the property for your replacement.
Yes, what you can't. There are some trees that we're saving around the property too, and so we're attempting to. We don't have any of the existing trees that we're saving colored on this plan. So.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. As far as buffering, I think if I heard correctly in your testimony, you are providing screening or buffering from the existing residential properties?
Yeah, no buffering or screening is required. This is a residential property, and there's no requirement of buffering from one residential property to another, but we are providing it with the landscape plan that we have proposed.
Okay. Now, as far as the environmental impacts, as far as your site construction and different things, are there any concerns or anything during your preliminary assessment of the site and different things?
No, the site has been is undisturbed. There's a substantial amount of there are mature trees on the site itself. There's nothing indicating that there's a limiting factor with the design or building able to build on the site itself. It's not located in a flood hazard area. It's not located in an area that's subject to flooding. So that I don't know of any environmental constraints that might impede the development of this property.
Okay. And the site's serviced by all public utilities?
Yes, we have sewer, water, gas, overhead electric is directly in front of our property. So we have all the utilities are available for this site.
Okay. And then I guess in the latest set of revisions, looks like you guys did some soil testing for the drainage system.
We actually did for two purposes. We did, since there was a change in the schedule, we were able to go out and schedule soil testing out at the site. We did 5 borings, 4 in the location of the building itself, I believe it was, and 1 to the north. I think it's 5 we did. Maybe we did 4. But in either case, there was the water table. Well, first off, the soil was actually found out to be very, very sandy soil, down to a depth of about 15 feet. And there's no structural issues with being able to construct the house on the property. And then water-wise, there was no groundwater condition that was in the area of the home for 15 feet, and to the north, I believe it was 9 feet.
Okay. So the systems, as you have them designed currently, will function as planned?
That's correct.
And they'll satisfy the NJDP BMP manual design for seepage pits?
They will, but that doesn't apply because
Correct,
the
that's
BMP
fine.
manual doesn't apply to this. But it is designed in that fashion. That's correct.
Understood. Okay. Moving on, as far as garbage collection, I know you said that it'll have cans there for the residents. Do you know what the process will be for collection of them? Is it a private service? Will it be taken to the curb?
I believe this is going to be handled the same way as any of the residents along Ganther Avenue will be handled. So it'll be, if it's curbside pickup, the cans will be brought out to the curb.
Okay. I know in your testimony you talked about the lighting and that it'll be a low level. is there, in the event that the light, for whatever reason, which I doubt, being that the style light that you're proposing is the bollards, which are generally a low-level lighting, is there ability to adjust that level should it be too bright?
I'd have to look to see if they're dimmable. I don't know. They're LED lights, so it's very possible they might be dimmable. I don't know that, but it's possible.
Okay. Now, as far as the generator location, you put that in the rear of the property. Is that typical where you would put the generator?
Generally, I try to put them to the rear of the units. There was several reasons why I chose that location. I have to look at where the bedroom windows are. There's separation between the unit and the windows. I believe it's 5 feet, so we have to locate the generator in that fashion. Plus, there's also the code, the zoning code, and I believe this is the one that was the least amount of, basically, this was the best location for the generator. I'll put it that way.
Okay, and that'll meet. And if it needs to be adjusted per code, it'll get adjusted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meet all setback requirements.
Okay. All right. And then, if I heard correct, so there's a number of easements, obviously, on the southern portion of the property. The various people that have rights to those easements will have full access to them as needed. That's correct?
They testify to accessibility.
That's correct.
Thank you. I know we had a comment regarding green infrastructure. Now I know you're obviously requesting a variance to exceed the total coverage. Is there any reason why green infrastructure was not looked into or contemplated as far as your stormwater measures?
We're able to capture the runoff from all the impervious areas and store them on site in the seepage pits. I believe that we're meeting the goals in terms of we're recharging the groundwater, and we're also capturing the stormwater. So I believe that anything else would be a burden on the applicant in terms of pervious pavement or something of that nature.
Okay. Fair enough. And then one last question. I know in your testimony you had talked about importing soil to the property. I guess all material imported would be certified clean material for the type of development for residential standards.
Yes, when we get to the point of if the board looks favorably to the application, we get forward, whenever this project gets to the point of being able to be constructed, we would have to find a source and make sure that it was clean fill for the site.
Okay. All right. Thank you. As far as the board, so just so you guys are aware, as we've had other applications similar to this where the soil movement exceeds the 100 cubic yard threshold. Typically, your code says for 100 cubic yard or greater, the planning board takes action on that. Obviously, you guys are not the planning board, and the code has set precedents on that the zoning board may act on behalf of the planning board.
I think there's a provision in the code that allows the zoning board to act.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention, so that's something that you guys will need to act on at the end of this
The
hearing.
board would have jurisdiction to act on that.
Yes, thank you.
So, all right, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Caroline?
Just one, actually. Your landscaping plan differs somewhat from the architect's landscaping plan. Is yours the one that's going to be
I don't know
used
why
going
the
forward?
architect adds stuff to his plans that he shouldn't. The site plan is my job, not his.
So your plan actually shows, I believe, more landscaping and certainly landscaping in different areas. So
That's correct.
we want to figure out what is correct. We utilize your site
We
plan
use
for
mine,
that.
and we can ask if I have to revise my plan, I'll make him revise his and take that stuff off.
I'm not getting involved with that, but I just wanted to clarify so that the board was
Site
clear.
plan supersedes the architectural.
Just
And
confirming.
it has more landscaping, so that's even a second reason.
Just confirming so that there's no confusion should the board act favorably what the proposed landscaping would be. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Bob?
No questions.
Steve?
Yes, you stated the manhole covers existing that are buried. They're going to be raised to a surface?
They'll be raised to the surface, that's correct.
Okay. You're going to submit the soil reports to us?
Yes, we can do that, yes.
Stabilization?
Yeah.
The easement that leads on the north side, that leads to the cemetery, is this property going to be maintaining that walkway?
Presently, right now, I believe the DPW, there's a depressed curb there, and I believe the DPW drives through to the back.
Are you proposing a walkway of some sort?
No, we are not.
It's on your property?
We would just keep it the same way it is today, which is, I believe, a lawn area right now. If the borough chooses in the future to put something back there, they'd have the ability to do so.
That's all.
Okay. Does any member of the board?
I thought there was testimony. I'm looking at my notes.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying that they're correct. 15-foot walkway to cemetery in the back. I thought that was a representation that was going to be
I
addressed.
thought the 15-foot might have been the last hearing. I don't recall it from this one.
No, this is all
Oh,
today.
that's from there? Okay. I know he was talking about a walkway. I just don't recall him saying 15
Maybe
foot.
it's the wrong term.
Listen, then if I said walkway, it's a ingress and egress easement to the back where someone could walk. So
But it's not a sidewalk, is that what
it's
you're
not a
saying?
sidewalk. It is
That's how I
not
interpret
improved.
It's going to be like a grassy
grass
area.
area, right? It's lawn area right now, and it will continue to be that.
So it's
It's a 15-foot access way, not a walkway then.
Ingress egress easement
All right.
or access easement, however you want to say it.
Thanks.
I think you have it as access easement on your plan.
Yeah, I do.
I would say that's probably the best terminology for it. It's an access easement for the benefit of the borough.
Is that an existing easement?
It currently is not because the borough owns the property. However,
right.
that's their point of access to the cemetery property
Okay.
in the back too.
So there will be an access easement provided. That's going to be a condition, I guess, of any approval,
Well, the
right?
borough has to convey to us too.
Yeah.
So it'll be part of that, but they would reserve that during that time frame.
So does any member of the board have any questions of witness? No? Okay. Yes, please. Ms. DiDio?
Diane Camello, DiDio, 416 Oradell Avenue. Chairman, I know this is not a time for comment, but I want to ask your indulgence. There is a young man here this evening who has resided in Oradell his whole life, who now attends a residential educational facility out of state in Massachusetts. The only reason he's here today is because he became an Eagle Scout yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
And he has a very brief prepared statement. He will not be back again as he resides out of state. So with your indulgence, I would ask that you entertain his comment.
Since I say things have to be done in proper order, and I decide what's proper order, please come up.
We need to swear him in, Mr. Chairman.
I
If it's
thank
a
you,
statement,
Chairman.
Yes, you're welcome.
Mr. Whitaker.
If he's going to make a statement,
Who's
I
going to
think
be
he has to be sworn in.
testifying?
He has to be sworn in? Okay.
Yes.
Put up your right hand.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this proceeding shall be true, so help you God.
I knew.
Okay.
Thank
And we
you.
need to get your name.
Oh, state your name and your
Liam Gibney, 936 Midland Road.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liam Gibney, and I am here to speak about the United Way housing project for people with special needs that is proposed to be built in my hometown of Oradell. My mom and dad have been updating me on what has been going on during these meetings because it is something I have a special interest in this home, and I am not. I know that there was concern about drug addicts or criminals moving into this home. I'm not a drug addict or criminal. In fact, I just became an Eagle Scout yesterday. I currently live 5 hours away from my family in a school in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, because there were no high schools in New Jersey that were able to meet my needs. I have a rare genetic condition called Prader-Willi syndrome, and this syndrome has created many obstacles for me in life. One of the biggest areas that is affected is that my brain never tells me that I am full, and this is a huge issue for people who have PWS, and it is something that may interfere with my ability to live independently someday. This is what brings me here tonight. I have been a Boy Scout with Troop 36 and a member of the St. Joe's Youth Group for years, and have dedicated countless hours of service to the Oradell community. I do not like living so far from my family, but I know that Latham Centers is the best place for me right now. I hope when I turn 21, I will have the opportunity to live in one of these United Way's homes in New Jersey, so I can have proper supervision and be able to live close to my family and friends. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story about why I think this is an important project and should be embraced by all members of the Oradell community. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, now, it's 10:38, and I plan on closing questions at 10:45. So, Council, would you be able to do that now, or do you want to pick it up starting at the next meeting?
I would say start. I have a lot of questions
So,
prepared.
okay, in that case, we will carry this case until 7:30 p.m. on June 17th without need for further notice. We do have a couple of more items on the agenda to handle, so if those of you who decide you don't want to stand and watch us do some administrative stuff, please leave quietly. But thank you for coming.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Okay. Old business, financial disclosure statements. Folks,
I'm in.
You're in? I'm in. I filed my financial. Okay.
No,
No?
I got to call up. I spoke to Steve.
Carlos is working on it.
Oh, okay,
I
yes.
have it by tomorrow.
Please, yes. Yeah, right. Because remember, they punish us for volunteering by hitting us with a penalty.
Steve, you can see that everybody that's in, right?
Yeah, no good
Warrants
deed.
were accepted?
On the
Our
financial
financial disclosures were accepted, or?
You get that when you submit the information.
Yeah.
You get a certification that
Okay.
was accepted.
Yeah, okay.
And you really should send it to me, so.
I did, okay.
Okay, and I don't have any other old business. Does anybody else have any old business?
So the training thing is scheduled for June 30th?
You arrange with the trading with Steve. I don't get involved in that, but certainly, everybody should get their training as soon as possible. New business. Does anybody have any new business? Don't have any. Open to the public. I'll open the meeting to the public. Please come up, identify yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's 50 Beverly Road. The reason I'm asking is that when you're here and you want to point to something up there and you can't reach, and the microphone's over here, and you're trying to talk, you can't. Can we have a step here or something so that you can step up and grab the microphone and point there or something?
I don't see that possibility, but Steve can raise it with the powers that be in the borough, but I don't see that happening.
No, there'd be a hazard in stepping up. You should be able to.
What about a platform? Not a step, but a platform.
I would say no.
Yeah, you'll just have to reference the chart and leave it at that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, the thousands of people still here, and anyone else? No? In that case, I will close the meeting to the public. It is 10:41. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. 10:41, meeting adjourned. See you folks in another month.
See you next time.
Why the Crown Prosecution Service intervened in that Swedish extradition request in order to prolong it, the inference being they were setting him up to be extradited to the U.S. It's not clear to me how much longer this goes on. Assange will have another appeal about about whether or not his free expression rights will be violated and